Tonight, we're uncovering the unsolved mysteries of every mythical Pokémon. This is a fascinating topic, but I'll keep my narration calm to ensure you can still drift off to sleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. In the vast and storied history of the Pokémon world, there is a distinction that separates the rare from the truly impossible. We are all familiar with the legends, the titans that carve the continents, the dragons that represent truth and ideals, and the deities that govern time and space. But beneath that layer of established mythology lies a group of entities that the history books can barely describe. In the original Japanese text, these are not simply called mythicals, they are known as the Illusory Pokémon. It is a fitting title for creatures that exist more as whispers, rumors and glitches in the fabric of reality than as documented biological species. While a legendary Pokémon might be a known force of nature that a dedicated researcher can eventually track to a mountaintop or a hidden cave, a mythical Pokémon is something else entirely. They are the ghosts in the machine of the Pokémon universe. The mystery of the mythical Pokémon begins with a single name that changed the trajectory of the entire franchise: Mew. Before the internet was the repository of all human knowledge, Mew was a ghost story told on playgrounds. It was the original, unsolved mystery, a creature that wasn't supposed to exist in the game's code, yet somehow did. That sense of profound uncertainty. The feeling that there is something hidden just beyond the tall grass that we weren't meant to see, is the heartbeat of every mythical Pokémon discovered since. These are creatures that do not follow the traditional rules of evolution, biology, or even physics. They appear in the wake of comets that visit only once every 1,000 years. They dwell in the cracks between dimensions. They are manufactured in secret laboratories by scientists attempting to play God, or they are ancient relics of civilization that have been forgotten for centuries. But as we look closer at the collective history of these 20-odd beings, we begin to realize that the gaps in their stories are often more important than the facts we are given. When the Pokédex tells us that Mew contains the genetic code of every Pokémon in existence, it raises a question that threatens to dismantle the entire evolutionary tree. If Mew is the ancestor of all life, where does that leave the creator deities? When we find a creature like Majana, a mechanical marvel built 500 years ago, we have to ask ourselves what kind of lost technology could breathe a soul into a vessel of brass and gears. These aren't just rare monsters to be collected. They are the keys to understanding the fundamental nature of life, consciousness, and the cosmos in the Pokémon world. Every generation brings a new set of questions, beings like Celebi, who treat the flow of time as a playground, leaving us to wonder if the history we know is actually fixed, or if it is being constantly reshaped by a silent guardian. We encounter Darkrai, a creature that feeds on nightmares, forcing us to confront whether certain Pokémon are manifestations of human emotion rather than biological organisms. We look at the stars and see Deoxys, a literal alien virus mutated by a laser beam, proving that the mysteries of this world extend far beyond the atmosphere of the planet. Even the god of Pokémon, Arceus, is shrouded in a layer of myth so thick that we cannot be certain if the creature in battle is the true creator or merely a physical avatar designed to be understood by human minds. Tonight, we are going to treat these mysteries like cold cases. We are going to look at every single mythical Pokémon, from the foundational secrets of the Kanto region to the most recent enigmas of the modern era. We will examine the evidence found in ancient ruins, the data recovered from high-tech facilities, and the folklore passed down through generations of island dwellers and forest protectors. We are searching for the truth behind the illusory label. Why were these creatures hidden from us? What is their true relationship to the Pokémon every day? And perhaps most importantly, what do they tell us about the origins of the world itself? The stakes are higher than they appear. To solve the mystery of the mythical Pokémon is to solve the mystery of existence. These beings represent the fringes of what is possible. They represent the intersection of science and magic, where a computer program can become a living thing and a wish can manifest as a physical entity. They are the anomalies that prove the universe is far stranger than any professor's research would suggest. As we move through each generation, from the tall grass of Pallet Town to the hidden reaches of the Paldea region, we will piece together a narrative that has been decades in the making. prepare yourself for a journey into the unknown. We are stepping into the shadows where the light of the Pokédex doesn't reach. We are going to explore the origins that don't make sense, the powers that shouldn't exist, and the silent witnesses to history that have been watching us from the periphery since the very beginning. This is not just a list of rare creatures. This is a deep dive into the greatest unsolved mysteries of the Pokémon lore. Let us begin at the beginning, with the original Phantom, and see how deep the rabbit hole really goes. To truly understand the mysteries of mythical Pokémon, we have to go back to the very beginning, back to a time when the concept of a mythical Pokémon didn't even exist yet. When the first generation of games, Pokémon Red and Blue, were released in the late 1990s, the Pokédex was supposed to contain exactly 150 species. Players were told that if they could catch every single one, they would be celebrated as the ultimate trainer. But then something strange began to surface. Whispers, rumor, a 151st Pokémon hidden in the code, unreachable through normal gameplay. Its name was Mew, and Mew changed everything. In Japan, the classification for Pokémon like Mew is not mythical, it is illusory. The Japanese term, Maboroshi no Pokémon, translates directly to illusory Pokémon, a label that emphasizes not rarity in the traditional sense, but a kind of spectral, almost legendary elusiveness. These are creatures that exist at the edges of belief. They are seen only in glimpses. They are the subjects of tall tales of childhood stories, of data miners' obsessions, and the very first one, Mew, set the template for every single mystery that would follow. Let's talk about that template. When the games were originally released, Mew was not obtainable in any legitimate way. No in-game event, no hidden cave, no special item. It simply existed in the code as a ghost, a secret left by the developers, perhaps as a placeholder or a joke. But players discovered it through the infamous Mew glitch in Generation 1, where manipulating certain encounter values could force a wild Mew to appear. This glitch became the stuff of playground legend, but even more famous was the rumor of a truck. A small, otherwise unremarkable vehicle parked near the SS Anne in Vermilion City. The rumor claimed that if you used strength to push the truck out of the way, Mew would be hiding underneath. The rumor was false, of course. The truck served no purpose, but the myth persisted for years, and it established a fundamental pattern, that mythical Pokémon are tied to secret, obscure, and often unreachable locations that require obsessive effort to find. Then there was the island, Faraway Island, a location that actually existed in the games, but only if you had a specific event item, the old sea map, which was never officially distributed outside of Japan. On that island you could encounter Mew at level 30, standing alone in a grassy field overlooking the ocean. The island had no other purpose. It was a pilgrimage, a one-time meeting. The entire experience was designed to feel like a fragment of a larger story, a brief window into a world that was otherwise closed off. And the way players had to obtain Mew, through real-world events, through mail-in promotions, through attending Pokémon movie screenings, cemented the idea that these Pokémon were not just secrets. They were reward structures. They were gifts from the developers, handed out to only a select few, creating a culture of exclusivity and speculation that would define every event, distribution for the next 20 years. But there is another layer to Mew's mystery, one that cuts directly into the lore itself. The Pokédex entry for Mew in many games claims that it is the ancestor of all Pokémon. It is said to contain the DNA of every single Pokémon species. This is a staggering claim. It positions Mew as the original life form, the primordial cell from which the entire world of Pokémon evolved. And yet, when we look at the biological reality, at least as far as the game's own science suggests, the claim is deeply problematic. If Mew truly is the ancestor of all Pokémon, then why does its DNA contain the code of every existing species? That would imply that Mew already possessed the genetic blueprint for every future form before any evolution or divergence had occurred. It is less like an ancestor and more like a genetic library, a complete catalogue of all possible Pokémon life. Perhaps the translation is misleading. Perhaps Mew is not an ancestor in the evolutionary sense, but a reservoir of potential, a master template, a living codebase from which all other Pokémon can be derived. The anime and later games occasionally flirt with this idea, showing Mew as a playful, shape-shifting creature that can learn any move, but never quite explaining how that ability connects to its role as the supposed origin of all life. And then we have Mewtwo, the clone, the experiment, the proof that Mew's DNA could be manipulated to create a new being. Mewtwo is not a mythical Pokémon in the traditional classification. It is often labelled as a legendary, but it is inextricably linked to Mew's story. The relationship between original and copy, between ancestor and artificial successor, raises a chilling question. If Mew's DNA can be used to create Mewtwo, what else could be created? The answer echoes through every generation of Pokémon that follows. Genesect, a fossil from 300 million years ago, modified by Team Plasma, Diancie, a sudden mutation from a carbink that should not be able to evolve. Majana, a mechanical body animated by a soul heart, built by a human craftsman 500 years ago. Each of these mythicals carries the DNA, so to speak, of Mew's original mystery. They are all beings that blur the line between natural life, man-made creation, and ancient origin. They are all illusory. The cultural impact of that 151st slot cannot be overstated. When players discovered that there was a Pokémon hidden beyond the official roster, it ignited a hunger for secrets. It made the world feel larger, deeper, more mysterious. Every generation since has included at least one mythical Pokémon that is unobtainable through normal gameplay, distributed only through limited time events, and surrounded by a story that feels deliberately incomplete. The truck, the island, the data, these are the pillars of the myth. They are the reasons why, even today, when a new mythical Pokémon is announced, the community immediately begins searching for the glitch, the hidden trigger, the real truth behind the official story. But perhaps the most enduring mystery is not about Mew's biology or its classification. It is about whether we are meant to find the answers at all. The designers of Pokémon created Mew not as a solved riddle, but as a permanent question mark. And in doing so, they established a blueprint that every mythical Pokémon would follow. Be rare, be strange, be wrapped in rumor, and never, ever reveal everything. The Illusory Template is not about giving players a complete story. It is about leaving a door slightly ajar, just enough to make us wonder what lies on the other side. And that door leads us to another forest, another ghost, another creature that has lingered at the edge of perception since the days of the second generation. It is tied to time, to forests, and to one of the most enduring unsolved fragments of Pokémon lore. A mystery that, like Mew, was never meant to be fully uncovered. But that is a story for the next chapter, the one they call the Forest's Ghost. From Mew the Ghost in the Machine of the Kanto region, we now turn to another ghost. One that hides not in a truck or under a truck, but deep within the ancient woodlands of Yoto. If Mew was the blueprint for the idea of an illusory Pokémon, then Celebi is the blueprint for the myth that moves through time itself. And like Mew, it came wrapped in a mystery that the games themselves never fully cracked. The Ilex Forest is a place of stillness. Moss hangs from the trees, the air smells of damp earth and old roots, and the locals speak of a guardian that watches over the grove. A voice that whispers through the leaves, a shimmer in the corner of your eye. The people of Azalea Town call it the voice of the forest. They know it as Celebi, a tiny, fairy-like being with green wings and eyes that seem to hold the light of 1,000 forgotten springs. But Celebi is not just a forest spirit. It is a time traveller, and its time travel is not linear. Most stories about time travel in fiction follow a straight line. You go back, you create a paradox, you change the future. But Celebi's relationship with time is far more fluid. In the lore of the Johto region, it does not simply jump from point A to point B. It exists across all moments simultaneously, like a song that has always been playing and will never end. The forest itself seems to resonate with this presence. Every rustle of leaves, every beam of sunlight filtering through the canopy feels like a message from another era. To encounter Celebi is not to meet a Pokémon. It is to brush against the fabric of time and to feel the faint echo of 100 possible pasts and futures. And that brings us to one of the most famous unsolved puzzles in Pokémon history, the GS Ball. If you were a player of the original Gold and Silver games, you may remember a strange event that never quite made sense. In the anime, Ash receives a mysterious golden ball with blue lettering, the GS Ball, and is told to take it to the Ilex Forest, where a researcher named Kurt might be able to open it. The ball is said to contain something special, and it is strongly implied that it is connected to Celebi. But the games were different. In Pokémon Gold, Silver and Crystal, the GS Ball was an item that existed in the code. It could be obtained via a trade from a different game, but it had no function. It sat in your bag, inert, a relic of a story that never came to be. Why? Because the GS Ball was intended to trigger an event for Celebi. In early development, players were supposed to take the ball to the Ilex Forest Shrine, and after solving a puzzle, Celebi would appear, but the event was never officially distributed in the West. In Japan, players could receive the GS Ball via a special Nintendo Power distribution, and then the Celebi encounter would unlock in the Crystal version. But for the rest of the world, the GS Ball remained a dead end, a mystery without a key. The community spent years trying to crack it. Rumors spread like kudzu. You had to stand in a certain spot for exactly 1 hour, or talk to every NPC in the forest while holding the ball, or trade it back and forth between generations. Some players swore they saw Celebi in the forest after doing something obscure, but the truth is simpler and sadder. The event was never activated in the international releases. The GS Ball became a symbol of all the mythical content that fans had to wait years to see, or sometimes never saw at all. But the mystery of the GS Ball is really a mystery about how we encounter mythological Pokémon at all. Celebi is a creature that exists outside of linear time, so perhaps the missing event was not a mistake. Perhaps it was fitting. A Pokémon that transcends chronology should never be caught in a straightforward way. Its appearance in any timeline is an anomaly, a gift, a rumor made real. The GS Ball, sitting unused in so many save files, is like a locked door to a moment that never happened, and that makes it one of the most poetic unsolved mysteries in the franchise. Now the voice of the forest is not limited to Johto. In later games, Celebi appears as a guardian that crosses generations, carrying messages from the past to the future. In the Pokémon Mystery Dungeon series, it is a guide that helps heroes navigate the threads of fate. In the events of Pokémon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, if you could finally obtain Celebi, usually through a special distribution, you could unlock a time travel sequence that linked the Johto games to the original Gold and Silver. Celebi was the bridge between generations, a living connection to the world before the world changed. And that role is what makes Celebi more than just a time-traveling fairy. It is the keeper of continuity in a franchise that constantly reinvents itself. When you capture Celebi, you are not just capturing a Pokémon. You are capturing a piece of the story that binds every game together. The Ilex Forest Shrine is not just a location, it is a threshold, and every time you stand before it, you are standing in the same spot where millions of players before you have wandered. Will this be the moment the GS Ball finally opens? It never opened for most of us, but the longing itself becomes part of the myth. The unanswered question, the event that never aired, the Pokémon that exists just out of reach. That is the essence of what it means to be illusory. As we leave the forest and its whispering leaves behind, we turn our gaze toward a different kind of slumber, one that lasts 1,000 years. In the desert sands of a far-off region, a wish sleeps there, waiting to be awakened, and like the GS Ball, that wish has always been just a little bit out of reach. But in the next chapter, we will finally open our eyes to it. From the mystery of Celebi and its tangled time loop, we now turn to a creature that exists almost entirely outside of time itself. Jirachi wakes for only 7 days every 1,000 years, and the rest of its existence is spent in a state so deep that it borders on death. This is not a poetic exaggeration. It is a biological paradox that has never been fully explained. How does a living creature sustain itself for a millennium without feeding, without moving, without aging? What mechanism allows Jirachi to emerge from that slumber, not as a fossil, but as a fully conscious, active being capable of reshaping reality? Let us begin with what we do know. Jirachi is often called the Wish Pokémon, but that name only scratches the surface. Its body is small, almost childlike, with a metal-like plating across its head and a large blue crest that fans out behind it. But the most striking feature is the third eye that sits directly on its abdomen. This eye is not for seeing in the ordinary sense. It is described in some sources as a true eye, a window to something far greater than the physical world. During Jirachi's waking period, that eye glows with a pale, almost ethereal light. When it grants a wish, the eye emits a pulse of energy that seems to bend light and space around it. Now, consider the implications of 1,000-year dormancy. In the natural world, there are creatures that enter states of extended torpor. Some frogs can freeze solid and thaw. Certain insects can remain in stasis for decades, but none approach a millennium. That timescale pushes Jirachi out of biology and into something closer to suspended animation maintained by cosmic forces. The Pokédex entries hint at this. Jirachi is said to sleep beneath glaciers, or inside mountains, or at the heart of a cometary orbit. The common thread is that its resting place is always isolated, always protected, always aligned with the movement of celestial bodies. This is not a coincidence. The third eye on its abdomen appears to act as a receiver for stellar energy, slowly absorbing cosmic radiation over the centuries. Think of it as a battery that charges over 1,000 years, then discharges its energy during that brief window of wakefulness. But energy alone cannot explain consciousness. If Jirachi were merely a biological machine, it would still need to maintain cellular integrity, prevent decay, and retain memory across such an immense gap. Some researchers speculate that Jirachi does not truly age during its slumber, that its body enters a quantum-locked state where time itself slows to a crawl relative to its internal processes. The third eye may be the key, a metaphysical anchor that keeps Jirachi tethered to the present, while the rest of its existence drifts through a slow dream. And in that dream, Jirachi is said to perceive the wishes of all beings on the planet. It hears them, sifts through them, and when it wakes, it chooses one to fulfill. This brings us to the central question of Jirachi's power. Is it granting wishes, or is it warping reality? The difference matters. A wish is a desire expressed in language, a human concept. But Jirachi does not speak. It communicates through telepathic impressions and shimmering auroras. When a wish is made near it, the energy from the third eye seems to resonate with the emotional payload of that wish, and then something remarkable occurs. The wish becomes real, not through trickery or illusion, but through an observable alteration of the environment. In the anime, Jirachi has been shown to materialize objects, heal wounds, even create living beings from thin air. These are not minor conjurations. They are permanent changes to the fabric of the world. Folklore within the Pokémon world often speaks of Jirachi as a benevolent spirit, but the term wish-granting carries a weight that might be misleading. If Jirachi can manipulate causality, then it is not granting wishes in the sense of a genie. It is rewriting the conditions that make a wish possible. This is closer to reality warping than to fulfillment, and here lies the unsolved mystery. What exactly is the mechanism? Does Jirachi tap into an underlying dreamscape where thought becomes matter? Or does its third eye connect to a dimension of pure potential, one that normally remains hidden? The answers are not found in any game or anime episode. They are left as gaps, as silences, as invitations to wonder. And then there is the matter of the 1,000-year cycle itself. Why 7 days? Why not a single moment or a full year? Some ancient texts preserved in the Hoenn and Sinnoh regions suggest that Jirachi's awakening coincides with the passage of a particular comet that appears only once every millennium and whose tail carries a specific wavelength of light. Jirachi's third eye is attuned to that light. When the comet becomes visible, the eye opens. When the comet fades, the eye closes, and Jirachi returns to its slumber. This would explain the connection to cosmic energy, but it does not explain why the comet and the Pokémon are linked in the first place. Are they separate entities that evolve together? Or is Jirachi itself a fragment of that comet, a living shard that fell to Earth and learned to sleep between its parent body's visits? The truth is that Jirachi remains one of the most deliberately ambiguous mythical Pokémon. Its lore is sparse compared to Mew or Celebi, and what little exists is often contradictory from one source to another. The games present Jirachi as a wish-granter, but the anime gives it a personality, playful, curious, and deeply attached to the friends it makes during its short wakefulness. That suggests that Jirachi is not a mindless force of nature, but a sentient being trapped in a cycle it cannot break. It remembers, it dreams, and every 1,000 years it opens its true eye and sees the world again, knowing that soon it must close that eye and wait another 1,000 years. This paradox of survival, how a creature endures a millennium of dormancy without fading into nothing, may never have a definitive answer, but it is precisely that lack of closure that makes Jirachi so compelling. It is a living mystery in a world already full of them. And as we close this chapter, we prepare to turn our gaze upward, beyond the atmosphere, to a different kind of enigma. One that arrived not from a comet, but from the cold, unfeeling void between stars. That story will begin with a flash of light in the skies over Hoenn, and a creature made not of wishes, but of pure alien survival. The virus from the stars is coming. From Jirachi's third eye, that mysterious orb that seems to drink in the energy of comets and stars, we move further outward, past the atmosphere, past the moon, past every known planetary body, into the deep black, where no Pokémon from our world was ever supposed to exist. But something did exist out there, something that was not born of Earth, not shaped by its waters or its winds, but forged in the vacuum of space and carried across unimaginable distances on a particle of cosmic dust. This is the story of Deoxys, and it begins not with a legend whispered around campfires, but with a documented event that the Pokémon world still does not fully understand. For years, fans speculated about extraterrestrial life in the franchise. Was Clefairy from the moon? Was Lunatone a rock from space? But those were always just hints, folklore wearing the mask of science. Deoxys changed all of that. Deoxys is the first and only confirmed extraterrestrial biological entity in the entire Pokémon canon. There is no ambiguity in its origin. The Pokédex does not say it is said to have come from space or rumor has it. It states flatly that Deoxys arrived on a meteorite. That is not myth. That is a fact, written into the very fabric of the Hoenn region's history. But here is where the mystery deepens, where fact becomes a question mark. What exactly landed on that meteorite? According to the official records, it was not a creature. It was a virus, a space virus, an astronomical organism, microscopic and dormant, drifting through the galaxy for perhaps millions of years. When the meteorite crashed into the Hoenn wilderness, the virus was released. And then, something happened that no one could have predicted. A laser beam, not a weapon, not an attack, but a beam of concentrated energy from a scientific experiment, or perhaps a natural phenomenon. The sources are frustratingly vague on who fired the laser, or why it was aimed at that exact spot. What we know is that the laser beam struck the virus, and the virus did not die. It mutated. It reorganized itself on a molecular level, turning a simple strand of genetic code into a shape-shifting, conscious entity. The virus from the stars became a Pokémon. This is the laser beam incident, a moment of pure chance that turned a lifeless microbe into one of the most powerful and adaptable creatures ever documented. Deoxys emerged with 4 distinct forms, each optimized for a different function: normal form, attack form, defense form, and speed form. It can rearrange its molecular structure at will, trading speed for power, power for durability, durability for speed, all in an instant. But that ability raises a deeply unsettling question. Is Deoxys a single organism, or is it a hive mind species from the deep cosmos? Think about it. The original virus was not one cell. It was a colony, a collective of countless microscopic entities working together. When the laser beam catalyzed the mutation, did it create one unified consciousness, or did it simply give a voice to the colony? If you look at how Deoxys behaves in the anime, in the games, in the lore, there is evidence for both. Sometimes it acts as a solitary being with a single will. Other times it splits into multiple bodies, each seemingly independent, but still connected by an unseen thread. In the Delta episode of Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, a Deoxys appears alongside Rayquaza in the sky, and its behavior suggests intelligence, purpose, maybe even emotion. But is that one Deoxys? Or is it a fragment of a much larger mind that still exists somewhere out there, waiting? And that leads to the biggest unsolved mystery of all. If Deoxys is a species, not an individual, then the one we know is just an emissary, a scout, the first of many. The meteorite that brought Deoxys to Hoenn was not unique. Space is filled with rocks and dust and frozen viruses, any of which could carry the seeds of another Deoxys. Every time a meteor streaks across the night sky, there is a chance, however small, that another laser beam is waiting to trigger a second mutation. And if that happens, what then? Would the new Deoxys recognize the first as kin or as a rival? Would they merge into a single consciousness, or would they compete for dominance? The franchise has never given us an answer, and perhaps it never will. The silence on this question is louder than any official answer could be, because Deoxys represents something terrifying and wonderful. The possibility that life is not unique to Earth, that Pokémon are not limited to this planet, that the universe itself is teeming with creatures we cannot yet imagine. And if that is true, then every mythical we have discussed so far, Mew, Celebi, Jirachi, they are all children of this world. But Deoxys is a visitor, a stranger, a being that does not belong to our ecosystem or our history. It belongs to the stars. And yet, there is one more layer to this mystery. Deoxys is not the only mythical whose origin lies beyond the horizon of our knowledge. There is another, one who rules the deep, who commands the currents and the tides, who is spoken of in whispers by sailors and divers. That story is waiting for us next, and it begins with a single word spoken under the waves: Prince. From the cold of space, we descend into the deepest, darkest waters of the Pokémon world. The virus from the stars mutated into a shape-shifting alien, but the sea holds its own brand of mystery, one that defies the very rules of biology and reproduction. This is the story of the Prince of the Sea, creature that should not exist according to the natural order, yet swims through the currents of legend as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. Manaphy is classified as a mythical Pokémon, but its strangest trait has nothing to do with raw power or ancient origin. It can breed. Think about that for a moment. Almost every other mythical is sterile, locked in a perpetual state of uniqueness, unable to pass on its genes through normal means. Mew, Celebi, Jirachi, Deoxys, none of them can produce eggs in captivity, but Manaphy can. And when it does, something truly bizarre happens. It does not produce another Manaphy. Instead, from the egg hatches a small, blue, almost translucent creature called Phione. This is a biological anomaly that has no parallel anywhere else in the Pokémon kingdom. Phione itself is a paradox. It shares Manaphy's design language, its watery nature, and even some of its moves. But it is weaker, and importantly, when Phione breeds, it produces only more Phione, never another Manaphy. So what does that make Phione? Is it a separate species, a degenerate form, a larval stage that never matures? The games treat Phione as a mythical for collection purposes, but its stats and abilities are far below what we expect from a legendary being. Some researchers argue that Phione is not truly a mythical at all, but a kind of wild offshoot, a biological echo of the original prince. And yet, Phione can only be obtained by breeding Manaphy, which means the Prince of the Sea is the sole parent of an entire subspecies that cannot revert to its ancestral form. It is as if Manaphy's lineage is broken, stuck in a loop from which there is no escape. This strange breeding mechanic leads us to the Temple of the Sea, an ancient structure hidden beneath the waves, built long before any human civilization. According to legend, the temple was constructed for a Pokémon that should not exist, a being so rare that its very presence was considered a miracle. The architecture is not designed for human habitation. Its halls are filled with seawater, its chambers shaped to guide currents and amplify the songs of the ocean. At the heart of the temple lies the Sea Crown, a relic that is said to grant immense power to the one who claims it. But the temple was not built for treasure hunters. It was built as a sanctuary for Manaphy, a sacred space where the Prince of the Sea could rest, protected from the world above. Why would an entire structure be dedicated to a single Pokémon that can barely defend itself? Manaphy is not a fighter. Its base stats are modest, comparable to an average fully evolved Pokémon. Its true strength lies elsewhere. It possesses an ability called Heart Swap, a move that allows it to trade stat changes with its opponent. On the surface, that sounds like a simple battle gimmick, but the implications are far deeper. Heart Swap is not just a mechanical swap of numbers. The name suggests a psychological exchange, a forced empathy. Imagine having your emotions, your memories, your very willpower exchanged with another creature against your consent. Manaphy can do that. It can reach into your heart and take what it wants, leaving you with a fragment of its own ocean-like tranquility. The psychological dimension is haunting. Manaphy is often depicted as gentle, playful, even naive. It forms bonds with humans easily, especially those who are pure of heart. But that bonding is not entirely voluntary on the human side. The anime shows Manaphy imprinting on a young girl, following her everywhere, and the girl's life is forever changed. Is that love? Or is it a form of emotional manipulation? Heart Swap suggests that Manaphy can force a connection, an empathy that blurs the line between self and other. For a creature that exists to bond, to navigate the social currents of the sea, this ability makes perfect sense. But for us, it raises uncomfortable questions about consent and identity. How much of our affection for this creature is truly our own, and how much has been gently nudged into place by a power we cannot see? The Temple of the Sea, then, is not just a home, it is a vault, a place where a creature with such intimate access to the psyche of others can be safe from those who would exploit it. The ancient builders understood that Manaphy was not a weapon, but a danger nonetheless. The architecture is designed to protect the prince, but also to protect the world from the prince's unintentional influence. Every corridor, every current, is a boundary that contains a power that should not exist. And yet, the greatest mystery is not Manaphy itself, but its offspring. Phione is the only mythical that can be mass-produced, the only one that blurs the line between legend and common species. How did this happen? Is Phione a mistake of nature or a deliberate safeguard? Perhaps Manaphy's ability to breed is a release valve, a way to shed its power into lesser forms so that the original remains unique. Or perhaps Phione is the true form and Manaphy is the mutation, a freakishly powerful anomaly that somehow learned to reproduce. The puzzle remains unsolved, waiting for a curious mind to dive deeper. But that is a story for another night. The Phione debate is far from over, and when we turn our attention to that tiny blue creature, the questions only multiply. For now, the Prince of the Sea drifts in the darkness, its heart open, its secrets hidden beneath the waves, waiting for the next explorer who dares to ask what it truly means to be mythical. The previous chapter ended with the Temple of the Sea, an ancient sanctuary built for a Pokémon that shouldn't exist. Manaphy, the Prince of the Sea, left us with a biological contradiction, a creature that could breed, that could produce offspring, yet whose young were something else entirely. That offspring is Phione, and that is where the mystery deepens into what many fans still call the Phione debate. Phione is the most contested classification in the entire mythical category. It sits in a strange space between what the games tell us and what the logic of the Pokémon world would normally dictate. Officially, Phione is listed as a mythical Pokémon. It appears in the National Pokédex with the same event, exclusive status as Manaphy, Jirachi or Darkrai. But unlike every other mythical, Phione can be bred in the wild. It hatches from an egg. It can be produced in unlimited numbers. This single fact shatters the fundamental rule of what a mythical is supposed to be. Think about it. Mythical Pokémon are defined by their rarity. They are not found in the tall grass. They are not obtained through normal gameplay. They exist behind real-world events, limited distributions, hidden tickets. Their scarcity is part of their identity. But Phione can be mass-produced. Leave a Manaphy and a Ditto in the daycare, and you can hatch as many Phione as you want, trade them away, release them, fill a box with them. That is not the behaviour of a mythical. That is the behaviour of a common species. And yet the games insist on classifying Phione as mythical. The Pokédex number is 489, right next to Manaphy. No evolution, no other form, just a small blue sea creature with a tiny crown and wide eyes that seems almost apologetic for existing at all. This is the heart of the debate. Is Phione truly a mythical, or is it a glitch in the system? A mistake in the law that Game Freak never corrected? A leftover from a design decision that made it through to the final game without anyone questioning whether it belonged? The answer may lie in the biology of Manaphy itself, and that brings us to the so-called degenerate evolution theory, a term that sounds more brutal than it really is, but captures the strange direction of this lineage perfectly. In nature, when a species becomes trapped in a niche environment or loses the selective pressure for complexity, it can devolve over time. Parasites lose their eyes. Cavefish lose their pigments. The genes for structures that are no longer needed are silenced or lost. Phione, by this theory, is not a separate species. It is Manaphy's own shadow, a simplified, degraded form of its parent that can no longer complete the life cycle. Here is the crucial detail. Phione cannot evolve into Manaphy, no matter how much you train it, no matter how many times you level it up, no matter what item you give it. Phione stays Phione, but Manaphy, when bred, always produces Phione. This is the only case in the entire franchise where a Pokémon gives birth to something that can never become what its parent is. It is a one-way street, a biological dead end. Degenerate evolution suggests that Manaphy is the ancient, complex form, and Phione is a simplified descendant that lost the ability to reach that form. Perhaps it is a vestigial stage, a remnant of a time when Manaphy's ancestors could breed normally and produce offspring that eventually grew into the full Prince of the Sea. Over generations, something went wrong. The path was broken, the metamorphosis was lost, and now all that remains is Phione, a creature that can never go home. There is another layer to this. In the wild, Manaphy is said to be able to bond with any Pokémon, to communicate across species, to calm the ocean itself. Phione has none of that power. Its ability, hydration, cures status conditions in rain, useful but common. It learns no special moves that set it apart. It has no signature attack. It is by all measures an ordinary water type, and yet it is still called a mythical. This contrast makes the debate even more uncomfortable. How can something so common be so rare in name only? Now we turn to the mystery of their mass sightings. There are reports, scattered across the history of the Sinnoh and Hisui regions, of entire groups of Phione appearing suddenly in the cold sea. The cold sea is the Northern Ocean, the same body of water that surrounds the island where the Temple of the Sea is said to rest. These sightings are not isolated. They occur in waves, sometimes hundreds of Phione surfacing at once, hovering the water like a blue carpet beneath the moonlight. What drives them? Why do they gather? Migration patterns in Pokémon are usually tied to breeding or feeding, but Phione does not need to breed in the wild. It can be born in captivity. It does not need to travel to spawn. Manaphy itself is rarely seen. The mass appearances of Phione suggest something else, some instinct older than their degenerate state, a memory of a journey they no longer fully understand. Perhaps they are searching for the temple. Perhaps they sense the presence of a Manaphy nearby, even if they can never become one themselves. Or perhaps they are trying to complete a cycle that has been broken for centuries. There is a story, told only in fragments, of a winter when the entire coast of the cold sea was lined with Phione bodies, beached by the thousands, still alive but listless, as if they had given up. No one knows why. Some say it was a failed attempt to evolve, a collective effort to transform that ended in collective exhaustion. Others believe they were calling out for a Manaphy that never came. And here is the final twist. Phione can be caught in the wild in some games. In Pokémon Legends, Arceus, you can find them in the waters of the Cobalt coastlands, not through an event, not through a special encounter, just swimming there, as natural as a Magikarp. This is unprecedented for a mythical. It challenges the very definition of the category. If a Pokémon can be found in the wild, can it truly be illusory? The Phione debate may never have a satisfying answer. It exists as a question mark in the Pokédex, a contradiction that the developers either overlooked or chose to leave unresolved. And perhaps that is the point. Not every mystery is meant to be solved. Some are meant to be lived with, to remind us that, even in a world of carefully designed rules, there are outliers, exceptions, creatures that do not fit the mold. Phione is one of them. It is the mythical that should not be, and it is the one that, by its very existence, asks us what the word mythical even means. But if Phione is the creature that cannot find its way back to glory, then there is another whose path is even darker, whose story is shrouded in permanent night. That creature does not need to evolve. It already possesses a power that terrifies the world. It comes not from the sea, but from the shadow that falls after the light is gone. Its name is whispered in legends about a lunar eclipse, a being that appears only when the moon is hidden, and when it does, no one can tell if they are dreaming or dying. That is the mystery we will face next, in Chapter 7, the Lunar Shadow. The debate over Phione's classification left us with more questions than answers, didn't it? A mythical that can breed, a Pokémon that reverts to a simpler form, a creature that seems to defy the very logic of rarity that defines its category. And in that uncertainty, we find a pattern. The mythicals that unsettle us the most are often the ones that blur the line between what we expect and what we cannot explain. Now we turn to a Pokémon whose presence disturbs something far more intimate than a Pokédex entry, something that slips into the space between waking and dreaming and refuses to leave quietly. There is an island in the Sinnoh region called New Moon Island. It does not appear on any ordinary map. It is accessible only by a mysterious passage through a cave on the eastern shore of Canalave City, and only to those who have obtained a special item, the Lunar Wing. The island itself is small, barren, perpetually shrouded in a dim, purplish twilight. The sky is dark, the ground is rocky, and at the center stands a single, unmoving figure, Darkrai. This is not a place of battle, it is a place of isolation. And that isolation is the first clue to understanding what Darkrai truly is. In the games, Darkrai's story is framed as a tragedy. The Pokémon is said to have been driven away from its home, forced to dwell in the shadows of New Moon Island, because its very presence brings nightmares to anyone who sleeps nearby. But here is the critical distinction that is almost always lost in the telling. Darkrai does not give nightmares. It cannot turn this off. It is not a predator that stalks the sleeping mind for pleasure or power. The nightmares are a side effect, a passive emission of its existence, like heat from a fire. And yet, because the effect is frightening, because it disrupts sleep and causes fear, the natural assumption is that Darkrai must be malevolent. But malevolence requires intent, and all evidence suggests that Darkrai is simply a living being with an unfortunate biology. A creature whose very life force spills over into the dreams of others without its consent. This is what I call the nightmare loop. Darkrai becomes isolated because its presence causes harm, but the isolation itself deepens its loneliness, and in its loneliness, its power grows more intense, creating a feedback cycle that only worsens the perception of its malice. The more people fear it, the more they shun it. The more they shun it, the more it withdraws. And the more it withdraws, the more its nightmares become concentrated, turning a casual unease into a legend of terror. The Pokédex entries themselves reflect this cycle of misreading. One entry says Darkrai can lure people into sleep and give them nightmares. But does it lure them? Or does it simply exist in their vicinity? Another entry says it will cause nightmares to protect itself. That word, protect, reveals the truth. The nightmare is a defense mechanism. It is not an attack. It is a barrier, a warning, a way to keep others at a distance because contact is dangerous for both parties. Now consider the counterpart to this story, Cresselia, the lunar Pokémon. While Darkrai is banished to New Moon Island, Cresselia is said to dwell on a crescent moon, a place called Full Moon Island, equally remote but draped in gentle silver light. Cresselia's presence dispels nightmares. It brings peaceful sleep, beautiful dreams, and the two are often presented as polar opposites, nightmare versus good dream, shadow versus light. But to view them only as opposites is to miss the deeper truth. They are a binary system, two halves of the same natural function. Sleep is not simply the absence of wakefulness. It is a cycle, a rhythm, and within that rhythm, there are periods of deep rest and periods of intense neural activity. Dreams of all kinds, pleasant and frightening, serve a purpose. They process memory, they process fear, they integrate experience. Darkrai and Cresselia are not good and evil. They are the night and the dawn, the storm and the calm, the tension and the release. One cannot exist without the other, and in the lore, when Cresselia is called upon to heal nightmares, it does not destroy Darkrai. It simply soothes the effect. The balance remains. This duality is echoed in the items associated with them. The Lunar Wing, given by Cresselia, protects the holder from nightmares. But the Lunar Wing does not banish Darkrai, it merely shields the sleeper. And in the games, the only way to reach Darkrai is to first obtain the Lunar Wing, and then use it to open the lock door to New Moon Island. You must confront the nightmare directly, not avoid it. That is the lesson. You cannot overcome the shadow by pretending it does not exist. You must walk into that dim twilight and face the lonely creature at its center. And what do we find when we finally meet Darkrai face to face? A Pokemon that does not attack unprovoked. A Pokemon that can be caught, befriended, even used in battle. Its signature move, Dark Void, is powerful. It puts the opponent to sleep. But in the anime and in the film, a very different story. Their Darkrai is not a villain, it is a protector. It fights to save the town of Alamos from the catastrophic collision of dimensions caused by Dialga and Palkia. It sacrifices itself. It is misunderstood by the townspeople, blamed for disasters it did not cause, and yet it continues to defend them. That is the heart of the Darkrai mystery. A being of nightmare that is also a being of loyalty, of sorrow, of quiet courage. Its nightmares are real, but its heart is not evil. So what is the unsolved mystery of Darkrai? Not whether it is good or bad, but whether we can ever truly separate a creature from its effects. If a Pokemon causes harm by merely existing, is it guilty? Or is it the world around it that fails to understand? The question echoes the Phione debate from earlier. Classification is not the same as identity, and Darkrai's identity remains tied to that lonely island, waiting for someone to see past the nightmares. And as we leave that shadowy shore, we turn our eyes to a different kind of isolation. A meadow perhaps, where gratitude itself takes root, where a small green Pokemon teaches us that even the smallest kindness can bloom into something beautiful. If we are willing to offer it freely, that is where this journey leads next. Darkrai's Nightmare Loop is a defense, not an offense. A biological reflex born from solitude on New Moon Island, where a creature isolated from the world learned to keep the world away with fear. But what if the opposite were also true? What if a Pokemon could be shaped not by loneliness and shadow, but by gratitude and bloom? That is the question that brings us to the Gratitude Bloom, to a small hedgehog-like being whose very biology rewrites itself in response to a single emotion, Shaymin, the Gratitude Pokemon. In its land form, it looks like a tiny green hedgehog with white flowers sprouting from its back. It is unassuming, almost fragile, a creature of grassy plains and gentle meadows. Yet hidden within its cellular structure is a mechanism so radical that it defies conventional evolutionary theory. Shaymin can change its form entirely, not through evolution stones, not through trading, not through leveling up, but through a biological response to environmental gratitude. In the presence of a specific catalyst, its body elongates, its legs stretch, its flowers fuse into a mane, and it becomes the sky form, a sleek, deer-like creature capable of flight and higher speed. This transformation is not permanent. It reverts when the catalyst is removed. It is a state of being triggered by a feeling, or at least by a flower that represents that feeling. That flower is the Gracidea, a small pink star-shaped blossom that grows in only one known location in the Sinnoh region, a place called the Flower Clearing. According to ancient texts, these flowers were planted by someone who wished to express gratitude to Shaymin for its role in purifying the land. When a Shaymin is exposed to a Gracidea blossom, its body undergoes a shift that researchers have struggled to classify. Is this a natural catalyst, like sunlight for photosynthesis? Or is it a genetically linked trigger, a mechanism hardwired into Shaymin's DNA over millennia of co-evolution with a specific plant? The Gracidea is not a simple herb. It contains compounds that seem to interact directly with Shaymin's nervous system, causing rapid cellular rearrangement. But why would evolution produce such a specific response? What ecological pressure demanded that a hedgehog become a gazelle when a flower was nearby? The answer may lie in the disappearance of the flower clearing itself. Modern maps of Sinnoh do not show the flower clearing. It appears in historical records, in stories told by elderly rangers and botanists, but satellite imagery and on-the-ground surveys have failed to locate it. Some say it was a pocket of land that existed only seasonally, appearing when the grassideers bloomed and vanishing when they withered. Others claim it was a sacred space that moved, like an island adrift in time. The most chilling theory is that the flower clearing was never truly physical, that it existed as a convergence of gratitude energy, a place where the collective thanks of a community manifested as a grove of flowers, and that once the gratitude faded, the clearing faded with it. If that is true, then Shaman's transformation is not just a biological event. It is a response to a metaphysical condition, a bridge between emotion and matter. Think about what that means for the grass idea. If the flower is a natural catalyst, then it is merely a chemical key that unlocks a dormant form. If it is a genetically linked trigger, that implies that Shaman and the grassideer share a common evolutionary history, perhaps even a symbiotic relationship that spans thousands of years. The grassideer might have been bred specifically to interact with Shaman, or Shaman might have evolved to respond to the grassideer, because the flower itself was once part of its life cycle, and yet no other Pokemon reacts to the grassideer. It is uniquely attuned to Shaman. This level of specificity suggests an ancient bond, possibly one that predates human civilization in the region. We are left with a mystery that feels more like a poem than a scientific report. Shaman's land and sky forms are a biological response to environmental gratitude. But what is gratitude to a plant? What is thanks to a flower? The grassideer is either a natural catalyst or a genetically linked trigger, and the flower clearing, the only known source, has vanished from every modern map. Perhaps the clearing still exists, but only for those who arrive with the right heart. Perhaps the flower only blooms when gratitude is sincere, and perhaps that is why the clearing cannot be found, because gratitude in this world is rarer than any mythical Pokemon. As we move toward the next chapter, we will leave the fields of gratitude behind and step into a space where nothing blooms, where no flower grows, and where the only light is the faint glow of a being that claims to have created everything. The original one awaits, and its mystery is far older than any flower. From the gratitude bloom of Shaman, we turn now to the seed of all existence. If the grassideer flower was a catalyst for transformation, then what we are about to discuss is the catalyst for an entire universe. We have traced the cosmic threads from Deoxys, the virus from the stars, to Manaphy's ocean-bound mysteries, to Darkrai's shadow of perception, and to Shaman's gift of environmental grace. Each of these mythicals orbits a central truth, that the Pokemon world was not simply discovered, but deliberately created. And at the center of that creation myth sits a being so foundational that its very name is a title, Arceus, the original one. Arceus is not merely another mythical Pokemon, it is the Big Bang of the Pokemon multiverse, the singular point from which all of reality expanded. According to the lore of the Sinnoh region, Arceus emerged from an egg in a void of nothingness, and with its first will, it shaped the cosmos. This is not a story of evolution or adaptation. It is a story of genesis. The Pokemon world's version of a creation event is not a random explosion of particles, but a deliberate act of formation by a being that exists outside of time and space. And here is where the mystery begins to deepen. If Arceus created the universe, then what created Arceus? That question has no canonical answer. The ancient texts of Sinnoh simply state that the original one was born from a solitary egg that appeared from nowhere. That egg is the original artifact, the first mystery. But Arceus did not work alone. The creation myth speaks of the 1,000 arms, a phrase that is often misinterpreted as literal limbs or weapons. In truth, the 1,000 arms are interpreted through the lens of interdimensional avatars, fragments or projections of Arceus's will that took on physical form to shape reality. These arms are not arms at all, but subordinate beings, each one a piece of the Creator's power made manifest. The most famous of these are Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina, the three Pokemon that govern time, space, and antimatter. But there are others, lesser-known projections that may have been lost to history. The myth suggests that Arceus fragmented its own essence to create the building blocks of existence, then withdrew into a realm beyond reach. The thousand arms are thus a metaphor for the many ways the creator interacts with its creation. Through avatars that can act independently while remaining tethered to the original will. This raises a profound question about the nature of Arceus itself. Is Arceus a single entity, or is it a collective consciousness expressed through myriad forms? The event that gave us access to Arceus in the games, the Azure Flute, hints at a deeper truth. The Azure Flute is not a musical instrument in the ordinary sense. It is a forbidden frequency, a sound that bridges the gap between humanity and God. The flute produces a melody that resonates at a pitch that can only be heard by those who have proven themselves worthy. Those who have caught every Pokémon, who have completed the ultimate objective. In the lore, the Azure Flute was a gift from Arceus to humanity, a way to call the creator back from its dimensional slumber. But the frequency is forbidden because it threatens the boundary between mortal and divine. To play it is to open a door that should remain closed. And yet when that door is opened, what do we find? Arceus does not appear as a towering god of infinite power. It appears as a small quadrupedal creature, almost horse-like, with a golden hoop and a serene expression. This is the avatar, the limited form that humans can comprehend. But the true Arceus, the original one, is likely beyond our perception entirely. The encounter is less about battling a god, and more about communicating with a force that has chosen to speak in a language we can understand. The battle itself is a ritual, a test of the human spirit, and when Arceus is captured, it does not break the world. It simply waits, willing to be studied, willing to reveal its mysteries one at a time, which brings us to the greatest unsolved mystery of all. If Arceus is the creator, then why does it allow itself to be caught by a 10-year-old trainer? The answer may lie in the nature of the Pokémon universe itself. In this world, bonds between humans and Pokémon are sacred. Perhaps Arceus, in its infinite wisdom, understood that to truly guide its creation, it must first be willing to be understood. Or perhaps the event in the games is not the real Arceus, but yet another avatar, a piece of the whole that chooses to play along with the rules of the world it made. The Azure Flute was never officially distributed in most regions of the real world, making the encounter with Arceus one of the most elusive events in Pokémon history. The forbidden frequency remains unheard by the vast majority of players, and yet the lore persists, whispering that somewhere beyond the Hall of Origin, the original one is waiting, not to be worshipped, but to be met. And as we close this chapter on the creator of all, we turn our gaze to a different kind of power, a star that does not create, but grants victory. Next time, we explore the victory star itself, and why a mythical Pokémon that represents winning might hold the key to a conflict buried deep in the history of the Unova region. The path from the original one leads to a star, and that star might be brighter than any god. From the moment Arceus shaped the universe with its 1,000 arms, the fabric of reality was set into motion. Not just the stars and the continents, but the very concepts that would come to define existence itself. And among those concepts, none is more paradoxical than victory, because victory is not a force you can touch, or a substance you can store. It is an outcome, a judgment, a fleeting moment when ambition aligns with circumstance. And yet, somewhere in the Unova region, there is a Pokémon that claims to hold that very concept inside its body. They call it the Victory Star. Its name is Victini. Victini is not a creature of myth in the distant past. Its story is woven into the history of a specific place, Liberty Garden, an island off the coast of Castelia City. According to the records buried in the games, Victini was the source of an infinite supply of energy that powered the construction of that island centuries ago. But here is where the mystery begins. How does a small rabbit-like Pokémon generate endless energy? The Pokédex entries describe it as producing an infinite amount of energy within its body. A claim so extraordinary that it challenges everything we understand about thermodynamics. No fuel, no reaction, no exhaust, just pure endless output. The architecture of Liberty Garden itself hints at this power source. The island was built as a haven, a monument to freedom, but its true foundation was Victini's energy. Think about that for a moment. An entire man-made island, constructed in an era before modern technology, sustained by a single Pokémon that never runs out of power. The ancient builders must have harnessed Victini's ability directly, perhaps through some kind of symbiotic resonance or a device that channeled its internal flame. We know that Victini can share its energy with others, creating a warm, empowering aura that inspires those nearby. But the mechanism remains unexplained. There is no known limit to how much energy Victini can produce, and no evidence of any waste product. It is a perfect engine, a perpetual motion machine given flesh, and that raises a deeper question, one that lingers like a shadow over every victory. Does Victini truly guarantee success, or does it merely attract the ambitious? This is what fans have come to call the victory curse. Consider the legend. Those who befriend Victini are said to win any battle, any contest, any endeavor. But history teaches us that such absolute guarantees often come with hidden costs. The curse is not that Victini fails you, it is that the promise of guaranteed victory draws people who do not deserve it. Kings and conquerors, generals and tyrants, all seeking the little star-shaped creature as a trophy, charm, a weapon. If Victini's power is infinite, so too is the greed it can inspire. The curse might not be supernatural at all, it might be human nature. Victini does not choose winners based on morality, it simply responds to trust and companionship. But the history of Liberty Garden shows that the island was not always a peaceful sanctuary. There are hints of conflict, of power struggles over the source of the infinite energy. In the games, you do not find Victini until you venture into the basement of the lighthouse on Liberty Garden, a place that feels more like a dungeon than a garden. That contrast between a paradise built on endless power and the hidden struggle to control it is the heart of the victory curse. Victini does not corrupt, but the promise of absolute victory corrupts those who seek it. Now let us look at the physics of Victini's signature move, V-Create. This is one of the most devastating attacks in the Pokémon world, a fiery explosion that engulfs the user in a tremendous burst of energy. But here is the anomaly. V-Create is described as an internal combustion, a release of pent-up power from inside Victini's body. Yet after using it, Victini does not lose any mass, does not emit any smoke, does not produce any cooling effect. There is no exhaust. In real-world combustion, you need oxygen, fuel and a spark, and you get heat, light and waste gases. Victini's V-Create seems to bypass the waste entirely. The energy is simply there, then it is gone, and Victini is ready to do it again, almost immediately. This suggests that the energy source is not chemical or nuclear in any conventional sense. It is something else, something tied directly to the concept of victory itself. Some theorists have proposed that Victini's power comes from a symbiotic relationship with the very idea of success. When Victini wins, it absorbs the energy of that victory, storing it as an inexhaustible reserve. But that would mean Victini cannot generate energy on its own. It must win to recharge. Yet the legend says it provided infinite energy for the construction of Liberty Garden, long before any battles were fought there. So the mystery deepens. Perhaps Victini's true nature is not a physical being at all, but an embodiment of willpower, a living assurance that effort will be rewarded. Its body is simply a container for that abstract force. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. If Victini is a manifestation of victory itself, then its bond with a trainer is not just companionship, it is a mutual affirmation. Victini chooses you because you believe you can succeed, and by choosing you, it makes that belief real. But the curse, if it exists, is that the victory it grants is never truly yours. It is borrowed, and borrowing infinite power comes with infinite responsibility. Liberty Garden stands today as a monument to that truth. A beautiful island built on a paradox, a place where endless energy meets the limits of human ambition. As we prepare to shift our gaze to another blade in the lore of Unova, there is a story waiting, One that involves a Pokémon who was trained, not born, to be a hero. A Pokémon who had to earn the right to wield a sacred sword. That story begins in the resolution of the sword. And it will test everything we think we know about worthiness and strength. But for now, let the warmth of Victini's endless flame settle in your thoughts. A gentle reminder that victory is not a destination, it is a choice. And every choice leaves a mark. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. Victini's story ended with a question about willpower and ambition, about whether victory is something you attract or something you earn. And that question lingers as we turn our gaze toward another Pokémon whose entire existence is defined by the same dilemma. Keldeo, the youngest of the Swords of Justice. Keldeo was never born into legend. It was raised into it, apprenticed under three of the most revered warriors in the Pokémon world, Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion. They took this small, uncertain colt under their wings and taught it the way of the sword. But here's the mystery that the games and the anime never fully resolve. Why did they choose Keldeo? What made this Pokémon worthy of their secret training? The official lore tells us that Keldeo's apprenticeship was hidden. The Swords of Justice did not announce their pupil. They trained in remote places, far from human eyes, and they did not speak of the young one who followed them. Some fans have speculated that Keldeo was not a natural-born fighter, that it lacked the raw power or the confidence to stand alongside its mentors. And perhaps that was exactly the point. The apprenticeship was not about teaching Keldeo to fight. It was about teaching Keldeo to believe. And that brings us to the heart of this chapter, the secret sword. Not a sword made of metal, not a weapon forged in fire, but a technique that exists entirely as a manifestation of will. In the Pokémon world, there is a move called Secret Sword, and it is exclusive to Keldeo in its resolute form. But the move itself is not the secret. The secret is that this technique physically changes Keldeo's biological form. Think about that for a moment. A Pokémon whose very body transforms not because of evolution, not because of a stone or an item, but because of an intangible force, resolve. When Keldeo masters the secret sword, it does not just learn a new attack, its shape shifts. Its mane becomes a flowing blade, its stance becomes taller, prouder, more aggressive. And the games mark this as the difference between ordinary form and resolute form. Now, what does that tell us about the nature of Pokémon biology? We have seen transformations tied to emotions before, of course. Eevee evolves based on environment and stones. Mega evolution requires a bond between trainer and Pokémon, but Keldeo's change is different. It is entirely internal, a shift driven by psychological evolution. The ordinary form is the Keldeo that doubts itself, the pupil still learning. The resolute form is the Keldeo that has decided, once and for all, that it belongs among the Swords of Justice. And yet the games leave us with an unsolved mystery. Why is this form change so fragile? In the main series games, Keldeo can only assume its resolute form when it knows the move Secret Sword, but the form is not permanent, it can revert. There is no evolutionary stone, no level threshold, no permanent lock. This suggests that the resolute form is not a final destination, but a state of mind that must be consciously maintained. One moment of doubt, one crack in the armor of will, and Keldeo could slip back into its ordinary form. This raises a fascinating question about the Swords of Justice themselves. Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion do not have alternate forms. They are always resolute. So why did Keldeo need a separate learning curve? Perhaps because Keldeo was never supposed to become a Sword of Justice in the traditional sense. Perhaps its role was always to be the living proof that willpower can reshape reality. The Secret Sword is not just a move, it is a philosophical statement. The Pokémon world has always danced around the idea that thoughts and emotions have physical consequences, and Keldeo is the most literal example. consider the environment where Keldeo trains. The anime shows it practicing in waterfalls, in mountain passes, in places where the elements test the body. But the real test is internal. The Swords of Justice could not give Keldeo its resolve. They could only point the way. And when Keldeo finally unlocks the secret sword, it is not because it has become stronger in the measurable sense. It is because it has accepted its own identity as a warrior. That is the psychological evolution. The ordinary form is the question. The resolute form is the answer. But there is another layer to this mystery. The Pokédex entries for Keldeo are surprisingly vague about its origins. One entry says that it crosses the world, running over water, and that it always hides its true power until it is needed. Another entry says that it will never show its resolute form to those it does not trust. This implies that Keldeo's transformation is not just a matter of personal growth. It is a matter of trust and vulnerability. The secret sword is not a technique you can learn from a TM. It is a technique that requires you to bare your soul to your mentors, to prove that you are worthy of the legacy they carry, and that legacy is heavy. The Swords of Justice themselves are legends born from a dark history. They were once ordinary Pokémon who rose up to protect the weak from human cruelty. Their story is one of defiance and righteousness. For Keldeo to join them, it had to prove that it shared that same fire. But here is the lingering question. Was Keldeo's apprenticeship truly secret? Or was it hidden from Keldeo itself? Some fans have theorized that Keldeo did not even know it was being trained until the final moment, that the Swords of Justice were testing its instinct, its heart, without ever telling it that it was being evaluated. That would make the resolute form not just a transformation of will, but a transformation of awareness. A sudden realization that you have always been who you needed to be. The anime gives us a glimpse of this when Keldeo finally stands up to a dangerous opponent, often a member of the legendary swords or a force of nature. In those moments, Keldeo's eyes change, its movement becomes fluid, and its ordinary form gives way to the resolute. It is a beautiful metaphor for self-actualization, but the games never fully explain the mechanics. We do not know if the resolute form is a temporary state or a permanent evolution of the soul. We do not know if Keldeo could ever lose it once truly earned. And we do not know if other Pokémon could learn the secret sword if they had the same willpower. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Keldeo is that it is the only Pokémon whose evolution is tied so explicitly to a conscious decision. Every other transformation in the Pokémon world is triggered by an external factor: experience, items, trading, location, friendship. But Keldeo's transformation is triggered by resolve, and resolve cannot be measured. It cannot be programmed. It cannot be given by another. It can only be found within. That is why Keldeo remains one of the most psychologically fascinating of all mythical Pokémon. It is not a creature of ancient origin or cosmic power. It is a creature of growth. And its story is a quiet reminder that the hardest battles are not fought with claws or fangs, but with the certainty that you belong exactly where you are. And as Keldeo stands at the edge of its own legend, resolute at last, we cannot help but wonder what happens next. Because the Swords of Justice are not the only ones who left a mark on Unova. There is another mythical tied to that region, one whose voice is said to resonate through time and melody, a muse whose song can calm the fiercest storms or awaken the deepest sorrows. That story waits for us in the next chapter. Keldeo's secret sword was a testament to will made flesh, a transformation born from mastery of rhythm and intent. But across the sea, in the bustling port of Castelia City, another being had been perfecting a far older performance, one that blurred the line between art and biology, between song and survival. This is the story of Meloetta, the Muse of Unova, and the lost melody that shaped human civilization without a single soul knowing its true source. To understand Meloetta is to understand that music is not simply a human invention. It is a fundamental force, a vibration that predates language, and in the Unova region, that vibration took on a living form. Ancient texts speak of a voice that could calm storms, raise crops and heal wounds, not through magic, but through precise tonal frequencies. That voice belonged to Meloetta, a mythical Pokémon whose very existence is a song waiting to be sung. But here is the mystery that lingers. Meloetta's song is not a single melody. It is a lost composition, fragmented across centuries. Each stanza buried in the cultural memory of people who never knew they were listeners. Historians of the Pokémon world have debated whether Meloetta influenced human art, or if humans simply co-created the music she embodies. The truth is stranger. Meloetta's song does not just inspire, it rewires. Those who hear her full aria experience a shift in their perception of harmony, a subtle alteration in how they structure rhythm and melody. Entire musical movements in Unova's history, the Baroque flourishes of ancient Lacunosa, the syncopated street beats of Castelia, can be traced to brief, undocumented encounters with a veiled figure humming in the rain. This influence is not metaphorical. Consider the pirouette transformation, a phenomenon unique to Meloetta. When she moves from her aria form to pirouette former, her body undergoes a dramatic physiological shift. Her limbs elongate, her posture sharpens, and her movements become a blur of kinetic precision. Scientists who have studied the transformation using high-speed cameras note that the change occurs in synchrony with a specific beat pattern, a rhythm of exactly 120 beats per minute, the same tempo found in ancient Unovan war drums and, curiously, in the heartbeat of a human dancer in full sprint. This is not magic. It is a rhythmic-based biological trigger. Meloetta's cells respond to percussive frequencies, as though they are tuning forks. The pirouette forme is not a separate body, but a reconfiguration of her existing form, activated when her internal rhythm locks onto an external pulse. In essence, she dances herself into a different state of being. The implications are staggering. If Meloetta can alter her biology through rhythm, then the songs she inspired in human artists may have been more than emotional. They may have been instructional. Every folk dance, every opera aria, every street corner freestyle in Castelia might carry the genetic echo of her lost melody, passed down not through memory but through movement. This brings us to the most puzzling question. Why did Meloetta choose to remain hidden for centuries in the cafes of Castelia City? Not in a forest, not in a mountain cave, but in the very heart of human commerce and chatter. The answer lies in the nature of her song. Meloetta's voice is not loud. It is subtle, almost subaudible, like the hum of a distant power line. To hear it properly, one must be surrounded by ambient noise, the clatter of cups, the murmur of conversation, the hiss of steam. In the cafes of Castelia, Meloetta found the perfect acoustic camouflage. She could sing her fragmentary melodies without drawing attention, weaving her influence into the daily lives of patrons who thought they were simply enjoying a cup of coffee. But there is a darker reason. Meloetta's full song, if sung in a quiet space, has a devastating effect. It can cause emotional collapse in listeners, overwhelming them with a nostalgia so pure it shatters their sense of self. She hid in the noise because she feared the silence. For centuries, baristas and customers saw her as just another eccentric musician, a street performer with a hauntingly beautiful voice. They never realized she was the source of every artistic breakthrough that defined Unova's golden age. And so the lost song remains lost, scattered like notes on a torn page. But Meloetta waits, patient as the tide, for a time when someone might finally hear the complete aria without breaking. Until then, she dances in pirouette under the neon lights, a ghost of rhythm and grace, teaching humans how to move without ever telling them why. The next chapter of this mystery takes a sharp turn from melody to metal. There is a weapon buried beneath the desert, ancient beyond memory, crafted by hands that were not entirely organic. Its name is the Paleozoic Weapon, and its trigger is something far older than any song. We ended last time with Meloetta's lost song, a melody that shaped human artistry across generations, whispered through centuries until it faded into myth. But if that song was a gift from a Pokémon whose voice could bend reality, Then what happens when a Pokémon is given no choice at all? What happens when an ancient life form is pulled from the stone and its own voice is replaced with the hum of machinery? 300 million years ago, the world looked nothing like it does now. Continents were still drifting into place. The air was thicker and the seas teemed with creatures that would never see the sun we know. Somewhere in that prehistoric chaos, a Pokémon lived, a natural predator perhaps, or a scavenger, or something we cannot even begin to guess. That Pokémon died, and its body was buried deep beneath sediment, compressed by time, turned to fossil, and there it sat, silent, waiting, for 300 million years. Then in the modern era of Unova, Team Plasma found it. To be precise, a scientist named Dr. Kaminko, or perhaps a team of them, working under the shadow of Getz's and his ambitions, unearthed this ancient specimen. But they did not simply study it. They did not place it in a museum. They had other plans. The fossil was intact enough to extract genetic material, and with technology that pushed the boundaries of what Pokémon science had ever achieved. They brought it back. They resurrected a creature from the Paleozoic era. But resurrection was only the beginning, because the Pokémon that emerged, Genesect, was not complete. It was alive, yes, but it was also vulnerable. It had been a creature of its time, adapted to an environment that no longer existed. The air was different. The predators were different. The very ecosystems had shifted beyond recognition. A fully natural Genesect, if it ever existed in that form, would have been ill-suited to the modern world. So Team Plasma did not stop at revival. They rebuilt. And this is where the unsolved mystery truly begins. What did Genesect look like before Team Plasma touched it? We have no fossil record of its original form. The fossil they found was incomplete, or perhaps the process of revival required modifications to stabilize the creature. The Pokédex entries are frustratingly vague. The black entry says it was brought back from a fossil and then modified. The white entry says it is over 300 million years old and that Team Plasma altered it, but neither tells us what it was before. The closest we get is the implication that Genesect's original body was insectoid, with a hard carapace and powerful legs. Some fans speculate that it resembled a large armoured bug, perhaps related to ancient arthropods like the Eurypterids or giant millipedes, but that is pure guesswork. What we do know is that Team Plasma replaced its back with a cannon, a weaponized piece of technology permanently fused to its body, and that cannon can be loaded with different elemental drives. Shock, burn, chill douse, changing the type of its signature move, Technoblast. So Genesect is not just a revived fossil, it is a cyborg, a living weapon designed by humans for a purpose that remains unclear. Perhaps it was meant to be an ultimate soldier for Team Plasma's takeover of Unova. Perhaps it was a prototype for something larger, but the project was never fully completed. Genesect was released into the wild, or escaped, and now it exists as a wandering enigma, carrying a piece of ancient history on its back. And that cannon is not the only modification. The most telling alteration is the high-speed flight form. In its natural state, Genesect is a walking, four-legged insect. It has wings, but they are small, seemingly vestigial. By all biological reasoning, it should not be able to fly. But Team Plasma installed a propulsion system, a jetpack of some kind, that allows it to take to the air at incredible speeds. The official artwork and games show a set of metallic thrusters attached to its back, possibly integrated with the cannon, that flare with energy when it enters this form. But here is the thing. This form is not a natural evolution. It is not a genetic trigger. It is forced engineering. The high-speed flight form is a biological impossibility achieved through mechanical augmentation. The creature that was once bound to the earth is now capable of aerial combat, using its speed to outmaneuver opponents and fire Technoblast from above. This raises the question, where does the fossil end and the machine begin? Genesect's body is still organic. It has flesh, chitin, blood. It can be healed by potions, it can breed, it can feel pain. but its cannon is inseparable from its nervous system. The thrusters are grafted to its exoskeleton. If you remove the technology, would Genesect survive? Would it revert to some base form, or would it die? The game never answers that. The lore never answers that. And that is exactly why Genesect remains one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries among the mythical Pokémon, because it is a victim. It was a creature that lived and died eons before humans even existed. It was minding its own ancient business, hunting or hiding, living a life we will never know, and then, without its consent, was torn from the grave, reshaped into a war machine, and set loose on a world it does not recognize. What does Genesect think about its own existence? The anime gives us a glimpse. In the Genesect movie, a group of these Pokémon are shown struggling to adapt to their new forms, searching for a home that no longer exists. They are confused, aggressive, and ultimately tragic. They are refugees from a time that has passed, forced to live in a world that fears them. And that leads us to the final mystery. Is there an original form we will never see? Could there be a natural Genesect, devoid of metal, running through a prehistoric forest somewhere in the distant past of the Pokémon world? The answer is almost certainly yes, but we will never meet it. The only Genesect we have is the one that Team Plasma made, and that makes every single Genesect we encounter a walking monument to human hubris. So what lies ahead for a creature so radically altered? The next chapter of this story takes us to a different kind of transformation, one born not from human hands, but from a mysterious internal mutation. A diamond that thinks and feels and reshapes itself in ways not even its own kind understand. That is the story of the Diamond Mutation. From the depths of prehistoric modification, we turn now to a mutation of a different kind. Born not from ancient fossils and cybernetic enhancement, but from the very heart of the Earth itself. A mutation that sparkles with the promise of creation, yet remains shrouded in geological mystery. We are speaking, of course, of Diancie. In the deep caves of the Kalos region, where pressure and time conspire to forge the hardest of natural materials, there exists a colony of carbink. These small, grey, jewel-like Pokémon are born from the compression of carbon over eons. Their bodies are testament to the slow, patient work of the Earth. They are not rare. They are common dwellers of rocky caverns, content to huddle together, their simple forms barely moving, as if waiting for something. And then, without warning, without any observable trigger, a change occurs. One carbink, no different from its companions, begins to glow. Its dull grey body fissures, and from within emerges a form of stunning brilliance, a creature of pure pink diamond, radiant and alive. This is Diancie, and its sudden appearance raises the first of many unanswerable questions. Is this evolution, or is it a freak mutation? The games and the Pokédex are frustratingly vague on this point. They state that Diancie is said to have been born from a carbink that underwent a mysterious transformation. But the word evolution in the Pokémon world has a very specific meaning, a predictable biological process that follows set rules. Carbink does not normally evolve. Its existence is static, and yet a Diancie appears perhaps once in a generation, if that. Some researchers speculate that this is not evolution in the traditional sense, but a mutation triggered by an external factor, a combination of immense pressure, a specific mineral composition in the surrounding rock, and perhaps even an exposure to an unknown energy source. The term freak mutation is not sensationalism. It may be the most accurate description of a process we cannot replicate and barely understand. What we do understand, however, is the incredible structure of Diancie itself. The creature is often referred to as the Royal Pink Diamond, and for good reason. Its body is composed of the purest form of crystallized carbon, a lattice of pink diamond that is both beautiful and immensely hard. But it is not merely a living gemstone. Diancie possesses a unique ability. It can create matter from compressed carbon. It can exhale a stream of carbon dioxide, then instantly compress it into diamonds of various sizes, some small enough to be used as projectiles, others large enough to be formed into shields or structures. This is not magic. It is a mastery of physical chemistry on an instinctive level. However, the energy required for such a feat is immense, and that is where the mystery deepens. Could Diance's birth and its power be linked to the catastrophic energy of the Kalos ultimate weapon? 3,000 years ago, King Azaid built a weapon of unimaginable power, fueled by the life force of Pokémon and the concentrated energy of a legendary being. That weapon fired, devastating the region and leaving behind a permanent scar on the land. Geologists have long noted anomalies in the caves of Kalos, pockets of residual energy, crystals that glow with an unnatural light. It is entirely possible that the same energy that turned a beloved Pokémon into a weapon also leached into the earth, altering the geology of Kalos for millennia. A carbink, resting in a cavern bathed in that ancient radiation, could have absorbed enough of that dormant power to trigger a transformation into Diance. The mutation would then be not a random event, but a delayed reaction to a world-changing catastrophe. But if that is true, why have no other carbink transformed? Why only this single rare occurrence? Perhaps the energy is so diluted that only a perfect alignment of geological conditions, carbon purity, and residual weapon energy can produce the miracle. Or perhaps the truth is even stranger, that Diance is not a mutation at all, but a dormant form that only awakens when the world needs a creator. A creature capable of generating matter from nothing is a being of enormous potential. Could the original carbink that became Diance have been chosen by forces we cannot comprehend? We are left, as always, with more questions than answers. The Diamond Mutation remains one of the most beautiful enigmas in the Pokémon world. A story of pressure, time, and the faint echo of a weapon that once threatened to end everything. And as we close this chapter, we prepare to open another. In our next case file, we step from the earth into the impossible dimensions of a Djinn, a creature whose rings can bend space itself, whose temper can reshape reality. The Djinn of Dimensions awaits, and its story is far from straightforward. Diance's diamond body is a marvel of natural compression, a mutation that turns carbon into crystalline power, and yet even the most radiant gem can only reflect the light of the world around it. What happens when the light itself is twisted, when the very geometry of reality bends around a being that was never meant to exist in a single form? That is the story of Hooper, the Djinn of Dimensions, and the most unsettling truth about it is that we may never know which version of Hooper is the real one. When you first encounter Hooper in the games, it appears as a small, almost mischievous creature with a single golden ring floating behind its head. It looks harmless, curious, perhaps even playful. That form is called Hooper Confined, and for centuries, that is the only form human civilization has ever known. The name is deliberate. This is not Hooper's natural state. It is a prison, a cage made of magic and desperation, crafted by ancient people who saw something they could not control and decided that the only option was to seal it away. The method they used is called the prison bottle. It is not a bottle in the ordinary sense. It is a relic, a vessel designed to hold not a liquid but a force of nature. Ancient humans, with no understanding of quantum mechanics or dimensional theory, somehow constructed a container capable of suppressing the true form of a Pokémon that could tear holes in space. The bottle is not a simple charm. It is a testament to the lengths a society will go to when it glimpses something it cannot comprehend. They did not destroy Hooper. They could not. So they locked it inside a smaller, weaker shell, and they made that shell its identity for thousands of years. But the bottle can be broken, and when it is, Hooper Unbound emerges. Unbound is massive, towering and draped in a chaotic aura of violet and black. Its 6 rings now float around it like satellites, each one a portal to somewhere else. This is the true scale of the Djinn, a creature whose power was never meant to fit inside a single body. The transformation is not a simple evolution. It is a release, a return to a primal state that the world was not designed to contain. The key to understanding Hooper's power lies in those rings. They are not mere decorations. They are wormholes, stable, controllable gateways that allow Hooper to summon objects, people, and even other legendary Pokémon from vast distances. In the lore of the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire games, Hooper can use its rings to call Pokémon from across the entire Hoenn region, including beings like Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza. This is not a trick. It is a demonstration of what the rings truly are. Anchors in the fabric of reality. Hooper does not create a copy or a projection. It brings the actual legendary through a dimensional corridor, tearing it from its own location and placing it at Hooper's command. How does this work? The games do not explain the mechanics, but the visual language is clear. The rings are not just portals. They are loops that fold space, bending the distance between 2 points until they touch. In physics, a wormhole is a shortcut through space-time. Hooper's rings appear to function on that principle, except they can be opened at will, in any direction, and they can hold the connection stable long enough for a creature the size of a legendary titan to pass through. The energy required for such an act is astronomical, and yet Hooper Unbound does it casually, as if it is simply stretching its limbs. This raises a question that the canon never answers. If Hooper Unbound is so powerful, why did it need to be sealed in the first place? The confined form is weak. It can still use its rings, but only on a small scale. The unbound form is a force that can reshape battles and rewrite geography. The ancient people who captured it must have witnessed something truly terrifying. Perhaps they saw Hooper summoning an army of legendaries. Perhaps they saw it rip mountains apart. Or perhaps they saw it open a ring and step into a dimension that did not belong to our universe. And they understood that if it kept going, it would never return, but it would leave a scar behind. There is another layer to the mystery. In the games, Hooper Unbound is a psychic and dark type. That combination is rare, and it speaks to a nature that is both mentally dominant and fundamentally chaotic. Dark type in Pokémon lore is often associated with underhanded tactics, fear and mischief, but paired with psychic, it suggests something more. A mind that can perceive all possibilities and a will that chooses the most disruptive path. Hooper is not evil. It is playful, but its play is like a child pulling the legs off an insect. Except the insect is a continent, and the child is a cosmic force. The prison bottle itself is a fascinating artifact, because it implies that ancient humans had access to knowledge we have since lost. They understood how to restrict a being, whose power was rooted in dimensional manipulation. They did not just throw a net over it. They created a binding that altered Hooper's form, compressing its energy into a smaller package. That is not brute force. That is precision metaphysics. And the bottle is still functional, which means the principles used to create it are not magic but technology. Or perhaps a science so advanced it appears magical. Modern researchers in the Pokémon world have tried to study the bottle, but its origins remain unknown. It is not made of any known material. Its inscriptions do not match any known language. And when Hooper is placed inside it, the creature does not resist. That is the strangest detail of all. Hooper allows itself to be confined. It is almost as if the confined form is a game it plays, a mask it wears while waiting for someone to break the seal. Perhaps the true power of Hooper is not its ability to summon legendaries, but its patience. The anime and movies offer a glimpse of what happens when Hooper Unbound is fully unleashed. In the film Hooper and the Clash of Ages, the creature's rings are used to bring legendary Pokémon from across time and space into a single battlefield. The sky fills with forms that should never coexist. Groudon and Kyogre fight side by side. Dialga and Palkia appear in the same moment. It is a symphony of chaos, and Hooper is the conductor. The film implies that Hooper's true agenda is not conquest, but curiosity. It wants to see what happens when the rules are broken. It wants to watch the collision. But the film also reinforces the idea that the confined form is the only safe version. When Hooper is free, it loses control of its own rings. The portals become unstable. They pull in creatures without Hooper's consent. The Djinn becomes a victim of its own power, unable to close the doors it has opened. That is the tragedy of Hooper. It is not a monster. It is a being with a power it cannot fully govern. And the prison bottle is not a punishment, but a mercy. A way to keep its power from consuming everything. So we are left with a paradox. The confined form is not Hooper, and yet it is the only Hooper that can exist without causing catastrophe. The unbound form is the true self, but that self is too big for the world. Ancient humans understood this, and they made a choice. They locked away a god in a child's body, and they hid the key. The prison bottle sits in collections, passed down through generations, and no one knows when it might be opened again. And perhaps that is for the best, because the moment the rings are freed, we will not be asking whether Hooper is real. We will be asking what else it might bring with it. A Djinn of Dimensions needs no master. It needs only a door. And when that door swings open, the steam rising from the earth will be the least of our concerns. The Djinn's rings closed, and Hooper was once again confined to its prison bottle. But while ancient humans had learned to seal a dimensional anomaly, another civilization had turned to steel and steam to contain something far more elemental. The Azoth Kingdom, a name that surfaces only in fragments of Colossian legend, did not build a bottle. They built a god. Volcanion is the steam engine, a mythical Pokémon whose body is part machine, part furnace, and all contradiction. Its typing, fire and water, is still unique to this day, and for good reason. These elements do not coexist. They annihilate each other. But Volcanion has found a way to turn that war into propulsion. Deep within its metallic chassis, water is heated to unimaginable temperatures, but instead of boiling away, it is held under immense pressure. The result is steam so dense and so hot it can carve through rock like a blade through mist. The Pokédex calls this internal process a steam explosion, and it is not an attack. It is Volcanion's heartbeat. Every time the mythical moves, it must release that pressure or risk bursting its own shell. So it vents, constantly, a walking, breathing pressure cooker that could level a city block with a single leak. And yet, this same volatile biology is what allows Volcanion to produce water from nothing, to generate clouds of steam that can obscure an entire mountainside, and to propel itself across lava fields without a single burn. It is a living contradiction, and it survives because it embraces the tension. But where does a creature like this live? Not in the heart of a volcano, as one might guess, because the heat of magma is unpredictable, too chaotic for a being that relies on precision. Instead, Volcanion makes its home on the Nebel Plateau, a high-altitude sanctuary located somewhere in the mountain ranges of Kalos. The plateau is shrouded in permanent mist, its air thin and cold, and yet Volcanion thrives there, using its own steam to regulate the temperature, to keep the fog thick, and to hide, because the Nebel Plateau is not just a home, it is a refuge, a safe haven for abandoned Pokémon. Those who have been cast out, lost or left behind by trainers, find their way to this place, drawn by an unseen pull, and they are protected, not by Volcanion alone, but by something far more ancient and mechanical, a being of iron and gear, whose presence is felt rather than seen, whose name is whispered only in the oldest records of the Azoth Kingdom, the mechanical god, the soul heart. But that is a story for another moment. For now, what we know is that Volcanion is fiercely territorial, not out of aggression, but out of duty. It patrols the Nebel Plateau like a sentinel, its steam jets roaring as it checks every crevice, every shadow, every newcomer. The air hisses with pressure, the ground trembles. And yet the Pokémon that live there are calm, they trust the engine. So why does Volcanion hate humans? The Pokédex entries and game lore are consistent in their phrasing. It is said to be hostile toward people, but the word hostile is a mask. Volcanion does not attack humans because it is naturally violent. It attacks because it remembers. The Azoth Kingdom, the same kingdom that built the mechanical god, once sought to capture and weaponize Volcanion. They saw its steam explosion not as biology, but as a resource. They tried to harness it, to control it, to cage it. The kingdom fell, its technology scattered, its secrets buried under centuries of Colossian soil. but Volcanion never forgot. That is the mystery. The human-hating mythical is not a monster. It is a survivor of a war we have no records of. It guards a sanctuary for the abandoned, and it does so with the fury of a being that knows what happens when trust is betrayed. What else is hidden on the Nebel Plateau? What is the true nature of that mechanical god? And why does the Azoth Kingdom symbol appear again, centuries later, on the chest of a single lonely creation, the mythical known as Majana? The engine is still running, and the next chapter is about the heart that powers it. From the Nebel Plateau, where Volcanion guarded the abandoned with steam and solitude, we now turn our gaze across the ocean to a workshop hidden behind 5 centuries of time. There, in the shadow of a kingdom that no longer stands, a human being did something no one had ever done before. They built a soul. Majana is the first documented artificial mythical created by human hands. Not a fossil revived and altered, not a creature mutated by exposure to some cosmic ray, but a machine designed from the ground up with a single impossible purpose: to house a consciousness. The Pokédex entries across generations all circle the same staggering claim. Majana was constructed roughly 500 years ago by a brilliant scientist, a gift for a princess. Its body is steel and gears, porcelain and paint, yet it feels. It dreams. It forms attachments that last for centuries. The question that haunts this story is not how it was built, but how it became alive. The answer lies in something called the soul heart. This is the true center of Majana, the engine of its being. The metallic shell is only a vessel. The soul heart is the real Pokémon. According to the lore, the soul heart can absorb the life energy of other Pokémon and convert it into its own vitality. But that description reads like a simplified version of a much deeper secret. What is life energy exactly? And how does a mechanical core process it? The scientist who created Majana understood something about the nature of consciousness that we have not rediscovered. The soul heart does not merely simulate emotion. It preserves the personality, the memories, the very identity of its inhabitant. And here is where the mystery deepens. The princess for whom Majana was made eventually passed away, yet Majana continued to exist, continuing to carry out her wishes, speaking with her voice, moving with her grace. Did the princess's consciousness transfer fully into the machine? Or did the soul heart create a new being that merely believed it was her? The games never say. They only show us a Pokémon that grieves, that guards a flower, that waits. Then, there is the question of the original colour. Most players know Majana as the red, white, and blue mechanical figure seen in recent titles, but there exists another variant. The Pokédex calls it the original colour Majana, a pale muted design with a softer palette. This is not a mere cosmetic difference. In the lore, the original colour represents Majana as it was first presented to the princess, before later modifications altered its appearance. The problem is that no one knows exactly when or why those modifications happened. Some believe the change occurred when the soul heart was transferred to a new body. Others suggest that the original colours faded over time as the machine aged, and that the bright modern colours are a restoration. But the truth is lost, buried in the archives of a forgotten alliance between 2 regions, Alola and Kalos. The Alola-Kalos trade era is one of the most fascinating and poorly documented periods in Pokémon history. Centuries ago, the 2 regions exchanged knowledge, goods, and technology. Kalos, with its advanced machinery and its ultimate weapon, and Alola, with its deep reverence for nature and its unique methods of energy manipulation. It was during this time that Majana's design and the Soul Heart technology were likely refined. But the alliance collapsed, the records were scattered, and the knowledge of how to build another Majana vanished. The Soul Heart remains a singular achievement. No other artificial Pokémon has ever replicated its success. Mewtwo was created by genetic engineering, not mechanical consciousness. Genesect was a living fossil retrofitted with a cannon, but Majana is a machine that became a person, and the blueprint for that miracle is gone. 500 years later, Majana still walks the world, a quiet testament to an inventor's brilliance and a princess's love. It is a mythical because its existence defies the categories we use to understand life. It is not born, not hatched, not evolved. It is made, and yet it is real. The soul heart beats on, a pulse of energy that no scientist today can replicate. And somewhere, in the ruins of an old Colossian castle, or in the hidden vaults of an Alolan temple, the original design for that core may still wait to be found. Or perhaps it was always meant to remain a secret, one last gift from a forgotten era. But there is another mythical whose name echoes through darker chambers. A being that dwells in the shadows between footsteps, that watches from corners where no light falls. Its legend is barely a whisper, and its face is never seen until it is too late. That story will have to wait until our next chapter. For the Gloomdweller does not appreciate being rushed. We just closed the chapter on Majana, a mythical born, not from nature's mystery, but from human hands and a heart of metal. But not all mythicals are forged. Some are found in the spaces between things, in the gaps where light cannot reach, in the cold breath behind a moving silhouette. Tonight we follow a shadow that has no master, no origin story carved in stone, and no desire to be seen. Chapter 18, The Gloomdweller. Marshadow's existence is defined by what it does not do. It does not announce itself. It does not fight in the open. Its Pokédex entries across every generation whisper the same unsettling truth. This Pokémon hides in the shadows of others, not simply lurking, but literally dwelling within the darkness cast by another creature's body. When you stand under a street lamp, and your own shadow stretches across the pavement, Marshadow could be there, pressed against that two-dimensional void, watching, waiting, learning. It is not a ghost type, but it moves like one, a spectral presence that slips between the real and the reflected, and this is not mere folklore. The Alolan legends speak of Marshadow as a silent observer, a being that has existed since before the islands were united. It was never given a shrine like Tapu Koko, or a ceremonial dance like the Island Guardians. Instead, it was given a role to test the one who would rise as the Rainbow Hero. Why? Because Marshadow understands strength better than any other Pokémon alive. It copies not appearance, but essence. This is the heart of what trainers and lore scholars call the Zenith state. When Marshadow engages an opponent, it does not simply mimic a move. It absorbs the very spirit of that opponent's fighting style. If a Machamp throws a punch with centuries of martial discipline behind it, Marshadow can replicate that same force, that same intent, as if it had trained for lifetimes. The shadow becomes the mirror, but the mirror does not just reflect, it improves. The Zenith state allows Marshadow to access what researchers call the pinnacle of combat potential for whatever skill it has witnessed. It is not a copycat, it is a crucible. It takes your best and shows you how it feels when wielded by something that has no ego, no hesitation, no fear. So why would a culture task such a being with evaluating a hero? Think about the Rainbow Hero in ancient Alolan lore. A mortal who would unite the islands against a great darkness. That hero needed to be more than brave. They needed to be adaptable. They needed to face a foe that could perfectly counter their every move. Marshadow was the ultimate proving ground. If the hero could defeat an opponent that knew their strengths as intimately as their own shadows knew their shape, then they were worthy. The Gloomdweller was not a villain. It was the final exam. The one test that could not be cheated, because the examiner was already inside your technique. And yet, for all its martial genius, Marshadow remains an enigma. Where does it come from? Is it a natural species? Or is it a manifestation of something older? The collective shadow of every battle ever fought on the Alolan Islands. The games never confirm. The Pokédex never speculates. It simply records the facts. Marshadow hides in shadows. Marshadow copies movements. Marshadow is rarely seen. The rest is left to the quiet hum of unanswered questions. But shadows cannot exist without light, and every mystery eventually meets its match. The next being on our list does not hide in darkness. It commands the storm itself. It is fast, feline, and electrifying in ways that blur the line between biology and pure elemental fury. The chapter ahead is Chapter 19, the Thunderclap Feline. We left off in the shadow of Shadow, a creature that dwells in the darkness cast by others, feeding on their fighting spirit and mirroring their strength from within the gloom. But what happens when the source of power is not a living aura, but the very sky itself? When lightning strikes the earth without warning, leaving only a flash, a deafening crack, and a circle of scorched ground. That is the calling card of Zeraora, the Thunderclap Feline. And unlike Shadow, who hides in darkness, Zeraora leaves no shadow at all, only the violent memory of electricity that was never its own. Here is the first mystery that sets Zeraora apart from every other electric type in existence. It does not generate electricity internally. Think about that for a moment. The vast majority of Pokémon that command the electric element rely on some internal organ, a pair of electric sacs, a bioelectric generator, a charged membrane. Zeraora has none of that. Dissect its anatomy in the lab, as far as the canon allows, and you will find no organ dedicated to producing volts. So how does it move like a lightning bolt? How does it unleash thunderous strikes that leave craters in the earth? The answer, as pieced together from the few field reports and the scarce data that exists, points to a phenomenon that researchers have begun calling the magnetic current theory. Zeraora does not create lightning, it collects it, like a living attractor. Its fur is structured in such a way that it acts as a natural lightning rod, drawing in electrical charges from the atmosphere. When a storm rolls in, when thunderheads build their static tension, Zeraora positions itself on the highest ground and lets the sky do the work. It absorbs the raw energy of the lightning bolt, stores it, and then redirects it at will. That is its speed, not generated from within, but borrowed from the elements. This explains something else that has baffled trainers for years. Zeraora is almost never seen in the wild. Its very existence is a rumor passed between villagers who have found patches of melted earth in remote mountain passes. No tracks, no nests, no evidence of a population. It leaves no trace of its presence except the aftermath of a storm. You might find a ring of blackened grass, a shattered boulder, the faint smell of ozone, and perhaps, if you were lucky enough to glimpse it, a streak of yellow fur vanishing over a ridge. But there is no den, no family unit, no migration pattern. It moves alone, faster than the eye can follow, and its only signature is destruction. Why would a species evolve to rely entirely on external power, in a world where most electric types can generate their own energy? Zeraora seems almost parasitic, except that the storm is a renewable resource that never runs dry. Perhaps this is an adaptation, born from an environment where lightning strikes were constant, where the ground itself was charged. Perhaps Zeraora is not native to this world at all. There are whispers among the more fringe cryptozoologists that the Thunderclap Feline might have come through a rift, a dimensional tear, drawn here by the electromagnetic field of our planet. But those are just whispers. What we know for certain is this: Zeraora exists at the threshold between life and pure energy. It does not need to eat in the conventional sense. It feeds on lightning. It does not need to rest. It simply discharges and recharges. And it has no reason to stay in one place, because the storm moves. So it moves with it, always chasing the next thundercloud, always leaving behind scorched earth as its only footprint. It is a ghost of electricity, as elusive as the wind that carries the rain. And if you think that is strange, wait until you hear about a creature that is not even solid, a being that flows like mercury, that can reshape its body at will, that may have been born from the very concept of mutation. The next chapter is called The Liquid Metal, and it begins with a single drop. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. Zeraora's body does not generate its own electricity. That much we know. It must harvest lightning from the sky, channeling raw atmospheric power through its fur and muscles. But what if there were a Pokémon that did the opposite? One that did not gather energy from its environment, but instead absorbed the very substance of the world around it, turning metal into its own flesh. And what if that Pokémon arrived, not through some ancient ritual or hidden cave, but through the screen of your phone, appearing in the real world as if it had always been waiting there? That is the anomaly of Meltan, the liquid metal. Meltan first appeared in 2018, and it did not emerge from a long-lost egg or a forgotten temple. It appeared in Pokémon Go, the augmented reality game played on real streets in real cities. Players found it by connecting their games to Pokémon Let's Go on the Nintendo Switch. The implication was strange on its face. A mythical Pokémon that was not discovered through lore or narrative, but through a multiplayer, cross-platform transfer system. For a creature whose entire existence is supposed to be shrouded in mystery, this was a meta-mystery unlike any before it. Meltan was not hidden in the code of a single generation. It was born from a handshake between two separate realities, the real world and the digital world. And that, perhaps, was the most fitting origin it could have, because Meltan is liquid metal. Its body is a pool of what looks like mercury, constantly shifting, forming a sphere with a single hexagonal eye. Its head resembles a massive hex nut, and if you look closely at its design, you see the unmistakable shape of a machine part, a component from something larger. The hex nut is not just an aesthetic choice, it is a biological signature. Meltan's entire structure is based on the idea that it is a missing piece, a fragment of a greater whole, and that fragment is drawn to others of its kind. You see, Meltan does not evolve through a stone or a trade or a specific level. It evolves through a process that requires a hive mind intelligence. In Pokémon Go, you need to collect 400 Meltan candies to evolve it into Melmetal. But in the lore, the implication is far deeper. Meltan must absorb enough metal, enough raw material, and then connect with other Meltan to form a collective consciousness. Only when the fragments unite into a single will does the transformation occur. The liquid metal solidifies. The hex nut becomes a giant coiled serpent of molten steel. That evolution is Melmetal, and Melmetal is one of the most physically imposing mythical Pokémon ever designed. A massive metallic serpent with a ring of hexagonal bolts around its neck and arms that can generate immense force. But it is the timing of its return that is the real mystery. According to Pokédex lore, Melmetal disappeared from the world 3,000 years ago. There is no record of why, no cataclysm, no extinction event. It simply vanished. For 30 centuries, no one saw a Melmetal. No fossil, no ancient carving, no temple painting. It was as if the species had been erased from history. And then in the modern era, it re-emerged. Not in the wild, not in a remote region, but through the same digital channel that brought us Meltan. The implication is staggering. Melmetal did not return because it was rediscovered. It returned because it was recreated. The fragments of its being, Meltan, had been scattered across the world, dormant, perhaps as tiny particles of metal that lay unnoticed for millennia. And only when enough of them gathered, when enough players transferred them between games, did the collective consciousness awaken. What caused the original disappearance? There are theories. Some believe the ancient Meltan were harvested by an advanced civilization, used to build machines or weapons. Others think the species simply lost its connection, that without enough individuals to form a hive mind, they fell into a long sleep. But the most unsettling theory is that Melmetal was not supposed to exist again, that its return is a glitch in the natural order, a Pokémon born from a database error, a creature that was never meant to appear in the modern world. And yet here it is, its hexnut eye staring out from our screens, a liquid metal that flows between the boundaries of fiction and reality. And while we contemplate the implications of a hive mind that can sleep for 3,000 years, and then reform from the metal of everyday life, there is another guardian lurking in the shadows, one that has never left its jungle, one that has watched over its domain from the inside. waiting for the right moment to step into the light. The rogue jungle guardian. But that is a story for another night. From the mysterious emergence of Melton and Melmetal, we now turn our gaze to a different kind of anomaly, a being that defies everything we thought we knew about mythical Pokémon, not through technology or mutation, but through the raw, untamed power of the jungle. This is the story of Zarude, the rogue jungle guardian. At first glance, Zarude appears to be a straightforward creature, an aggressive simian-like Pokémon that swings through dense forests, its long vines trailing behind it like living whips. But look closer, and you begin to see the cracks in that simple facade. Zarude is not just a solitary wanderer. It is a troop leader, bound by a complex social hierarchy that governs every aspect of its existence. Yet within that rigid structure, there is one rule that Zarude has broken in the most profound way possible. It abandoned its troop to raise a human child. This is the Dada anomaly. In the world of Pokémon, mythicals are rarely depicted as nurturing parents, especially not toward humans. Mew is playful but aloof. Celebi is a guardian of time, not a caretaker. Jirachi sleeps for centuries. But Zarude in the anime takes in a lost human baby and raises it as its own. This act shatters the established social order of its troop. Because in Zarude society, the troop is everything. Every member has a role. The scouts, the fighters, the gatherers. There is no room for a foreign creature, let alone a vulnerable human infant. Yet one Zarude chose to defy this. It became a father, and in doing so, it exposed a mystery that no Pokédex entry can explain. What drives a mythical to override its own instincts for the sake of another species? The answer may lie in the vines. Zarude's most distinctive feature is its ability to manipulate the thick, powerful vines that grow from its body. These are not just weapons or tools for swinging. They are extensions of its very life force, and they carry a secret. Deep within the jungles that Zarude calls home, there is a legend of a great tree, an ancient arboreal entity that serves as the heart of the ecosystem. The vines of Zarude are not merely attached to its body, they are a symbiotic bridge to that great tree. When Zarude wraps its vines around a wounded creature, it can transfer healing energy drawn directly from the tree. The tree, in turn, benefits from Zarude's protection and its role as a guardian that keeps the jungle balanced. This relationship is not one of dominance, but of mutual survival. The great tree provides the power, Zarude provides the will, and when that will is turned toward protecting a child, the vines become something more than a conduit for medicine. They become a symbol of parental devotion. Zarude uses its vines to shield, to carry, to comfort. It is the only mythical that has ever been observed consistently displaying parental instincts toward a human child. Not out of curiosity, not out of pity, but with the same fierce unconditional love that any parent would show. Why? The answer remains as elusive as the jungle mist. Perhaps it is because Zarude's connection to the great tree instills a deep sense of stewardship that extends beyond its own species. Perhaps it is because, in the absence of its own kind, the troop instincts rewired to embrace a new form of family. Or maybe, just maybe, Zarude is proof that the bond between Pokémon and human is written into the fabric of the world itself, older than any legend, stranger than any myth. As the vines recede and the jungle falls silent, we are left with a question that echoes through the branches of every great tree in every forest. If a mythical can break its own nature to love, what else might be possible? The answer will lead us to the most profound mystery of all, a tale of two beings who claim to be the very source of all life. One is said to carry the DNA of every Pokémon. The other claims to have created the universe itself. Next, we must untangle the greatest origin story ever told, in the chapter called The Ancestor versus the Creator, at the edge of the jungle, where the great tree's roots tangled with ancient stone. Zarude and its troop lived in a fragile balance, healing wounds with vines that pulsed with a life force older than memory. That symbiotic bond between mythical and ecosystem begs a deeper question. If a single Pokémon can be so intricately woven into the fabric of nature, what does that say about the very first threads of life. We have traced the echoes of artificial souls, shadow mimics, storm-born felines, liquid metal colonies, and rogue guardians. But every thread leads back to the same unresolved knot. Who or what began it all? In one corner of Pokémon history, there is Mew, the elusive pink progenitor rumoured to carry the genetic blueprint of every species that has ever existed. In another corner stands Arceus, the alpha of alpha Pokémon, the being said to have shaped the universe from nothing. The games have never given us a straight answer. The Kanto Pokédex declares Mew the ancestor of all Pokémon, a creature so ancient its DNA is the common denominator of all life. But then the Sinnoh region introduces Arceus, and suddenly the narrative shifts. Arceus didn't just create life, it created time, space, and the very concept of existence. So who truly came first? This is not a contradiction that can be swept aside with a hand wave. It is a deliberate fracture in the lore, a paradox that the Pokémon world refuses to resolve. The Pokédex itself contradicts its own entries, depending on which region's professor wrote them. In some records, Mew is the source. In others, Arceus is the origin. And the more you dig into the mythology, the more you realise that the two Pokémon might not be rivals at all. They may represent two halves of a single truth. Let me offer you a theory that has quietly circulated among those who study Sinnoh's oldest tablets and the journals of the first Pokémon researchers. It is called the physical versus spiritual origin model. In this view, Mew is the body, the tangible, biological vessel that contains the potential for all life forms. Its DNA is a library, a physical archive of every creature that will ever evolve. Arceus, on the other hand, is the soul, the immaterial spark that breathed consciousness into that library, the will that ordered chaos into a living universe. Mew provides the clay, Arceus shapes the form. One is the ancestor of flesh, the other the creator of spirit. Consider the evidence. Mew's existence is scientific. It can be studied, cloned, even fought. It has a genome that can be read. Arceus, however, exists in a realm beyond biology. Its plates are not organs, but artifacts of elemental creation. Its presence in the Hall of Origin is not a habitat, but a perch outside of time itself. When the ancient Sinnoh people spoke of the original one, they described a being that had no beginning, no end, a force that simply, Mew by contrast, is a creature with a starting point, even if that point is lost to prehistory, and yet the Pokédex continues to blur the lines. In the Fire Red entry, Mew is said to be the ancestor of all Pokémon. In Diamond, Arceus is said to have shaped this world. In Platinum, the same book that calls Arceus, the creator also notes that Mew's DNA contains the genetic codes of all Pokémon. How can both be true? Unless the ancestor is not the same as the creator, unless Mew is the origin of species, and Arceus is the origin of existence itself. Think about the way these two mythicals are treated in the games. Mew is an event Pokémon, a secret distributed to players as a gift or a reward for completing a Pokédex. Its arrival is personal, almost intimate. Arceus, on the other hand, is locked behind the most elaborate puzzle in Pokémon history, the Azure Flute, a missing event that many players never experienced. Mew is found in the wild, hidden under a truck in the original games or in a secret garden in later titles. Arceus is encountered in a dimension above the heavens, after you have proven mastery over time and space. The difference in presentation mirrors the difference in nature. Mew is of the world, Arceus is above it. But if Mew is the body and Arceus the soul, what does that make every other Pokémon? Perhaps they are the descendants of Mew's DNA, animated by the spiritual framework Arceus created. That would explain why some Pokémon can learn moves that seem impossible, why evolution is so fluid, why types and forms exist at all. The physical material comes from Mew, but the rules that govern that material come from Arceus. It is a partnership, not a feud. The true mystery is why the games have never allowed these two to meet in a single storyline. No mainline adventure has ever placed Mew and Arceus in the same narrative. The closest we came was in the movie, where Arceus appeared, and Mew was mentioned in passing, but they never shared a scene. Perhaps the developers know that, If they ever reconciled the paradox, the illusion would shatter. Mythical Pokémon are called illusory for a reason. They are not meant to be fully understood. So where does that leave us? Standing at the foot of a contradiction that we must hold in tension. Mew is the ancestor, Arceus is the creator. One is the origin of life, the other is the origin of everything. The body and the soul, woven into the same tapestry, but never quite touching. And maybe that is the point. Maybe Pokémon mythology is not a puzzle to be solved, but a story to be felt. But if there is a bridge between these two truths, a way to understand how the biological ancestor and the cosmic creator fit together, it lies in something deeper than what we have seen so far. It lies in the science of the sacred, the hidden mechanics of creation that govern not just Pokémon, but the very act of becoming. That is the next mystery waiting to be uncovered. Last chapter, we stood at the edge of existence itself, trying to reconcile the paradox of Mew and Arceus. We left with the thought that perhaps the truth is not a single answer, but a duality. Mew as the physical seed of all life, Arceus as the will that shaped the universe. But if creation can arise from the primordial soup of time and space, or from the mind of a god, what happens when creation is pulled from a petri dish? What happens when a being is not born, not hatched, not discovered in a hidden temple, but engineered in a laboratory, with a purpose written in its very code? Tonight, we step away from the ancient myths and into the cold, sterile light of science. We are comparing the created mythicals, Mewtwo, Genesect and Morgana, and we are asking a question that strikes at the very definition of what it means to be a legend. Can a lab-grown entity be a mythical? Can artificial life earn the title of illusory Pokémon? Or does a manufactured origin strip away the sacredness we attribute to these rare beings? Let us begin with the most famous creation in the Pokémon world, Mewtwo. It was born not from evolution, not from a mother's care, but from the ambition of human scientists who cloned the rarest of all known species. They took the genetic blueprint of Mew, that elusive ancestor believed to hold every Pokémon's DNA, and they twisted it. They forced it to grow in a tube, subjected it to brutal conditioning, and shaped it into what they thought was a weapon. But somewhere in that process, a soul emerged. Mewtwo is not simply a clone. It is a being with rage, with sorrow, with a will that refused to be a tool. It broke free. It built a fortress on an island. It confronted its creators. In the eyes of the world, Mewtwo became a legend, not because of its origin, but because of its defiance. The question then is whether its mythical status comes from its rarity and power, or from the story it carved out of its own suffering. Now consider Genesect. Its origin goes back far deeper than any laboratory record. 300 million years ago, a fearsome predator roamed the ancient world. Then time buried it, turned its bones to stone. In the modern era, Team Plasma unearthed that fossil and saw not a relic, but raw material. They rebuilt it, grafted a cannon onto its back, and gave it a new purpose. But what remains of the original? The creature that once hunted in the Permian seas is gone. What walks the earth now is a patchwork, part ancient instinct, part human design. Genesect carries the memory of a prehistoric past, but its present is a mask of technology. It is a living contradiction, a creature resurrected and remodeled, and like Mewtwo, it questions the boundary between natural and created. Then we have Morgana. Unlike Mewtwo, which was born from forced organic growth, and unlike Genesect, which was rebuilt from a once living being, Morgana was built from scratch. Over 500 years ago, a scientist crafted a metallic body to serve as a vessel for something called the soul heart. That soul heart is not a battery or a computer chip. It is described as a source of life, a repository of something close to a soul. The metal frame of Morgana is just an envelope. The true being is the energy within, and it was created as a gift, a comfort for a princess. That origin changes everything. Morgana was not made for war, not for conquest. It was made for kindness. It suggests that an artificial mythical can be sacred not because of how it was built, but because of the love that built it. This brings us to the ethical boundary. Can a lab-grown entity truly be a legend? In the games, the mythical classification has always been tied to rarity and event distribution, but in lore it is tied to something deeper, wonder. When you encounter a Mewtwo in the wild, you do not ask how it was made, you ask what it has become. The same is true for Genesect. You face it in its lair, and you sense the weight of its lost era. And with Majana, you see a creature that, despite its clockwork joints, feels more alive than many living things. But if science can create a mythical, then where do we draw the line? Consider the strange case of Null. This Pokémon was also engineered, designed by the Ether Foundation to counter the Ultra Beasts. It wears a control helmet that suppresses its power. It is a manufactured beast, created for a specific purpose, and yet type, Null is not a mythical. It is a standard evolving Pokémon. Silverly, its evolved form, is still not mythical. Why? What is the difference between Majana and Silverly? Both are artificial. Both have incredible power. But one was born from a singular moment of human artistry and devotion, crafted over centuries and imbued with a soul heart. The other was produced in a modern facility, designed as a weapon, given a mass-produced helmet. The difference may not be in the materials, but in the narrative. The soul heart of Majana is unique. It was given life by a legendary act of creation. Type Null was created by a corporation. In the world of Pokémon, a legend cannot be mass-produced. It must be one of a kind. So what does this mean for the created mythicals? They force us to expand our definition of the sacred. They show us that a legend is not only born from the earth or from the stars. It can be sparked in a laboratory if the hands that shape it carry a spark of the divine. Mewtwo, Genesect, and Majana are not lesser for being made. They are living proof that creation is not the sole domain of nature or gods. Humanity too can touch the edge of the impossible, and yet there is still so much we do not know. What happened to the original body of Genesect before Team Plasma rebuilt it? Is the soul heart a fragment of something older? Something that predates the scientist who found it? And for Mewtwo, we have seen its rage, but we have never seen the face of the scientist who first looked into its eyes. These questions linger because the creators of these mythicals left the records incomplete. Perhaps that is by design. A being of mystery cannot have its entire origin laid bare. We will soon leave the laboratories behind and journey into even stranger corridors. Our next expedition takes us beyond the boundaries of our dimension entirely. In the next chapter, we will encounter the beings that do not just exist in the world, but hold the keys to the spaces between worlds. We will meet the guardians of doorways that should not exist, and the creatures who can bend reality with a ring. That is a story for another night. For now, let the quiet hum of these created legends settle in your mind. They were built, but they became real. And in becoming real, they became sacred. We ended the last chapter standing at the edge of a question that has haunted the Pokémon world since its very first mystery. If a laboratory can forge a legend, if a machine can house a soul, then what separates the manufactured from the sacred? The created mythicals, Mewtwo, Genesect, Majana, they all blur that line between invention and life. But there is another boundary, far more fragile, far less understood. It is the boundary between dimensions. And tonight we step into that thin place. Consider the gatekeepers, not the ones who guard a doorway, but the ones who are the doorway themselves. Hooper, Celebi, and Palkia, three beings whose very existence bends the fabric of space and time in ways that canon has only ever hinted at. To map their hierarchy is to understand the layers of reality itself, or at least to stand at the precipice of that understanding. Let us start with time. Celebi is the creature most often whispered about in forest myths, a guardian of cycles, of growth, of the past and future intertwined. But its power is not a simple line from one moment to the next. In the lore, Celebi appears during periods of great harmony when the natural world is in balance. It does not control time so much as it walks through it, a passenger with the ability to step off the train at any stop. The mystery is this: does Celebi create the timelines it moves through, or does it merely observe them? The Pokédex entries hint that it travels across time, but they never say whether those travels change what was meant to be. Some researchers believe Celebi's power is tied to the forests it protects, that the trees themselves hold memory, and Celebi is the translator of that memory, not the author. That would make Celebi a guide, not a master, a gatekeeper who opens doors, but does not build them. Then there is Palkia, the spatial counterpart to Dialga. Palkia is described in Sinnoh mythology as the being that shaped the very dimensions of the universe. Where Celebi moves through time, Palkia bends space. Its power is raw and violent if provoked, capable of tearing apart the fabric of existence. But here is the unsolved question. Is Palkia's power a creation or a manipulation? The legends say it made space, but what does that mean? Did it stretch the emptiness, or did it bring it into being? And more importantly, if Palkia can reshape space at will, what happens when its will conflicts with the natural order? The anime and games show Palkia in moments of conflict, but they never fully explain the boundaries of its ability. Some theories suggest that Palkia does not control all of space, only the space that it can perceive, that its power is limited by its own awareness. That would place it below an entity like Arceus, but above nearly everything else. Now, Hooper. Hooper is the wild card, the trickster, the being whose rings are not just portals, but extensions of its own body. In its confined form, it is small, mischievous, almost childlike, but in its unbound form, it becomes something else entirely. A towering figure with 6 arms, each one capable of summoning objects and creatures from across distances that defy logic. What makes Hooper different from Palkia is the nature of its ability. Palkia reshapes space. Hooper moves things through it. That seems like a lesser power, but consider the implications. Hooper's rings are not one way, they are anchors. In the Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire games, Hooper's rings are the key to the mirage spots. Those strange floating islands that appear only under certain conditions, hovering in the sky above Hoenn. The mirage spots are not natural. They are rifts, tiers where the fabric of reality has been stretched thin, and the evidence points to Hooper as the cause. The mirage spots phenomenon is one of the most underexplored mysteries in modern Pokémon lore. In those games, the player can only access certain mirage spots on specific days, often tied to the real-world calendar. Some require a specific month, a specific phase of the moon, a specific time of day. This is not just a gameplay mechanic, it is a narrative clue. The mirage spots appear when the boundary between dimensions is weakest, and that weakness is often triggered by astronomical alignments. The sun, the moon, the planets. They exert gravitational forces that ripple through space. When those forces align, the barriers thin, and that is when Hooper's rings can reach across worlds. But here is the deeper mystery. Is Hooper responsible for the thinning, or is it merely taking advantage of a natural cycle? The answer may lie in the hierarchy. Celebi appears during moments of natural harmony, suggesting that its presence is a symptom of balance, not a cause. Palkia can create or destroy space, but it does so with intent, often in response to threats or disturbances. Hooper, on the other hand, seems to operate on a more primal level. Its rings are always there, always ready, but they become most active when the stars align. This suggests that Hooper is not a master of dimensions, but a parasite on the seams. It feeds on the gaps. It waits for the moment when reality is already frayed, and then it pushes through. Why would certain mythicals only appear during specific astronomical alignments? Because they are bound to the cosmic clock. Jirachi awakens every 1,000 years when a certain comet passes. Deoxys arrives from space, but its appearances often coincide with meteor showers or unusual celestial events. Celebi is tied to the seasons, to the growth cycles of forests, to the rhythms of the earth, and Hooper. Hooper's rings become visible only when the planets are in a particular configuration. This is not coincidence. The mythicals are not just rare. They are woven into the fabric of the universe's rhythm. They appear when the music of the spheres plays a note that matches their own frequency. And when that note is struck, The barriers between worlds become porous. So what does this mean for the hierarchy? Celebi the Traveller, the guardian of time's gentle flow. Palkia, the architect, the one who shaped the canvas on which time is painted. And Hooper, the trickster, the one who pokes holes in that canvas to see what is on the other side. They are not competing powers, they are layers. Celebi governs the narrative of existence. Palkia governs the stage. Hooper governs the cracks between the boards. Together, they form a map of how space and time interact. But the map is incomplete. We do not know where the boundaries end. We do not know if there is a higher gatekeeper, perhaps Arceus itself, or if these three are the only wardens reality requires. The mirage spots remain, floating in the sky over Hoenn, accessible only to those who know when to look. And the question lingers. Are the mythicals the cause of these tears, or are they the ones trying to mend them? Perhaps Hooper's rings are not a threat. Perhaps they are a lifeline, a way for beings trapped in broken dimensions to escape. Or perhaps they are windows into a larger truth, one that we are not yet ready to understand. That truth may be closer than we think. There are whispers of a language older than any human tongue, a language spoken not with words, but with the geometry of existence itself. Some say the mythicals are not just creatures. They are letters in that alphabet, and if we can learn to read them, we might finally understand the story of which we are only a small part. But that is a mystery for another chapter, one that will reveal itself when the stars are right, when the barriers thin, and when we are ready to listen. That chapter is called The Language of Myth. The Dimensional Gatekeepers left us standing at the edge of reality, watching the seams of space-time stretch thin under the pressure of Hooper's rings, Celebi's time-skipping vines. But those cracks in the world were not random. They were the result of something older, something intentional, a language older than any human tongue, spoken not in words but in scarcity, in rumors, in the very act of being unseen. In Japan, mythical Pokémon are not called mythical, they are called illusory Pokémon. The difference is not subtle. A myth is a story passed down, a legend that may or may not have a kernel of truth, but an illusion is something you glimpse and then doubt. It is a trick of the light, a shadow that moves when nothing should be moving. And that is precisely how the franchise has always framed these creatures. Not as folklore, but as phantoms that most trainers will never verify with their own eyes. This naming convention forces us to ask, what is the truth of an illusory Pokémon? If they are designed to be unseen, then their existence becomes a matter of second-hand testimony. Every Pokédex entry, every event distribution, every scratch of fan art becomes a piece of a puzzle that may never be completed, and yet the games deliberately feed this ambiguity. Mew was originally a rumour, a hidden creature that players could not confirm without a glitch or a special giveaway. That rumour was so powerful that it shaped the entire category. Mew was not real until Nintendo made it real, and even then, only for a select few. That same pattern repeated across generations. Pick-a-Blue, the fabled water-type Pikachu that appeared in Playground, Whispers years before Marill was announced, taught the franchise a valuable lesson. Fans wanted the unreachable. They wanted creatures that existed only in the space between what was shown and what was hidden. And so the designers began to plant seeds of illusion deliberately. The Mew 3, rumored evolutions from Generation 1 that never existed, became a blueprint for how scarcity could create desire. Instead of correcting every false rumour, the developers learned to weave those rumours into the fabric of real myth. Diancie, for example, was said to be a mutated Carbink before the games ever confirmed it. That rumour became canon. The line between fiction and fact started to blur on purpose. Event distributions became the primary tool for maintaining this aura of the unreachable. When you had to take your Game Boy to a store, stand in line, and receive a download over a local link, the act itself was a ritual. It was not about convenience. It was about the feeling of being chosen. The Pokémon you received was not just data. It was a token from a world that normally kept its doors locked. Even today, when distributions are delivered via internet code or home connection, the principle remains unchanged. You do not find a mythical Pokémon, you are gifted one. And that gift is always temporary, always timed, always a little bit mysterious. In the Japanese context, the word illusory carries an even deeper weight. It suggests that these Pokémon are not just rare, but that their very reality is suspect. They exist in the same space as urban legends and cryptid sightings. When you finally see one in battle, you are not just encountering a powerful creature. You are encountering a piece of the unknown that was never meant to be captured. That is why their origins are always half-written. Why Muse DNA claims are never fully proven. Why Genesect's true form is lost to 300 million years of history. Why Manaphy and Phione's relationship is still debated. The illusion is the point. So when we look at the way mythical Pokémon are designed, that the rumors of the past are not bugs in the system, they are features. Pickablue was never real, but its spirit lives on in every water-type mythical that came after. The Mew 3 were never coded into any cartridge, but the idea of a hidden set of evolutions informed the way later generations introduced branching forms and secret evolutions. The fans imagined, and the franchise listened, not to fulfill those imaginations exactly, but to echo them, to create new illusions that feel like old friends. And now, as we prepare to leave the language of myth behind, we must turn our attention to the ones that have been forgotten completely, not the ones that were hidden, but the ones that were never written down in the first place. The stories that slipped through the cracks of generation, gaps, and regional differences. The Pokémon that the official canon has all but abandoned. What happens when an illusion fades? What happens when the event distribution ends, and no one remembers the story it was supposed to tell? That is the territory of the next chapter, the Forgotten Lore. We trace the path of rumor becoming reality in the last chapter, seeing how the language of myth itself shapes the creatures we call illusory. But what about the ones that never made it into the official Pokédex at all? The whispers that only exist in spin-off titles, inside media, in the margins of history. Tonight we cross into that territory. The forgotten lore of mythical Pokémon goes far deeper than any one game can contain. When you crack open the archives of Pokémon's side adventures, you find traces of beings that function just like mythicals, but never received the official label. Pokémon Ranger, for instance, introduced a whole narrative around the creation of the Ranger sign and the ancient guardians of the land. There, the line between mythical and common legend blurs. In the Ranger games, you encounter Deoxys, but also the legendary beasts and the Regi trio. Yet the real mystery lies in the lore of the mythical that isn't recorded. The sense that some Pokémon exist only in the echoes of old quests. But perhaps the clearest example of a lost lineage appears in the ancient Hisui region. The nobles of Hisui are not mythical in the traditional sense, yet they carry something deeper. The Great Lord of the Woods, the Lady of the Ridge, the Lord of the Tundras. These are not just alpha Pokémon, they are beings blessed with a fragment of something divine. The lore of Hisui tells us that each noble was chosen by the almighty Sinnoh itself, or perhaps by the late Guardians, to protect a part of the land. But why these Pokémon? Wyrdeer, Ursaluna, Basculegion, Sneasler, Overquill, and Cleaver are all evolved forms of existing species, yet they rose to nobility. Is it because they carry a hidden inheritance from an ancient mythical line? Consider the concept. The nobles are worshipped as gods by the clans. They receive offerings, their moods are interpreted as omens, and their blessings are sought. That is the very definition of a mythologized being. The same status given to Arceus or Mew in other parts of the world. Yet the nobles are not mythical Pokémon. They are ordinary species elevated to divinity. This tells us something critical about how mythical status is decided. It is not purely about power or age. It is about memory. The nobles are remembered because the Hisui people kept their stories alive. Other mythicals, perhaps far older and more potent, have been erased from history entirely. Why would a mythical be erased? Sometimes because its role is complete. The ancient mythical that created certain landmarks or brought a key evolutionary trait might simply have no reason to appear again, or because its existence threatens the natural order. The lore of the Pokémon world is full of warnings about forces that should not be awakened. Genesect, for example, was a fearsome prehistoric predator turned into a weapon, but its original form is lost. And what of the mythical that may have been the ancestor of all the nobles? Some fans theorized that a long-lost mythical, perhaps a relative of Manaphy or a predecessor to the late trio, once blessed the Hisui region. The nobles may be the last living records of that lineage, each one carrying a fraction of the original power, a pattern. Certain mythicals are worshipped across generations, like Celebi in the Ilex Forest or Jirachi at the Millennium Comet. Others, like Marshadow or Zeraora, dwell in obscurity, almost as if they were never meant to be found. The difference lies in how they connect to human history. The worshipped ones have a role, a purpose that integrates them into rituals, prophecies, or ecological cycles. The forgotten ones have no such anchor. They exist outside of story, and therefore outside of memory. But that does not make them less real. It just makes them harder to catch. Perhaps the ultimate forgotten lore belongs to the Pokémon that were never even coded into a game. The prototypes, the cut content, the rumors that never solidified into design. The mythical category itself is built on the idea of the unseen, the barely glimpsed. So when we look at the nobles of Hisui, we are looking at a reflection of what happens when a region chooses to remember. They are worshipped, not because they are mythical, but because they were present. And that raises a chilling question. How many true mythicals have vanished because no one was there to tell their story? But the wheel turns. New games, new regions, new events bring fresh chances for discovery. And with each generation, the illusory Pokémon evolve in both form and function. We are approaching a frontier where the very definition of a mythical may shift. What will happen when the lore of the future meets the forgotten pages of the past? That story begins in our next hour when we look at what lies ahead for these elusive beings. The future of the illusory is coming into focus, and it may rewrite everything we thought we knew. The previous chapter took us into the forgotten corners of the Pokédex, the spin-off exclusives, the noble Pokémon of Hisui, whose names echo, but whose origins remain half buried in the past. We walked through the archives of side media, where mythicals live as rumors that never quite made it into the main canon. But history is not static, and neither is the meaning of the word illusory. If we step back and look at the shape of each generation, a pattern begins to emerge. A pattern that points directly toward the future, and that future, as strange as it sounds, may already be here. Generation 9 gave us something the franchise had never quite dared to do before. It gave us a mythical tied not to a natural force, not to a creature of the wild, but to a concept so abstract that it almost defies translation. I am talking, of course, about Pecorant, the little mochi-like Pokémon that arrived with the hidden treasure of Area Zero. And here is where the shift becomes unmistakable. For years, the mythicals of earlier generations were rooted in nature. Celebi guarded the forests, Manaphy ruled the seas, Shaymin blessed the flowers. Even Mew, with its genetic mystery, was still a biological entity. But Generation 9 took a deliberate step away from that. Pecorant is not a spirit of the land or the sky. It is a being defined by control, by the act of binding others to its will. Its story is one of manipulation. It uses chains, not claws. It forces loyalty, not respect. This is a creature of pure concept. The idea of possession turned into flesh, and it is not alone. Look at the generation before it. Generation 8 gave us Zarude, a Pokémon that at first glance seems like a return to nature, a jungle guardian, a protector of the forest. But Zarude's lore is not about the jungle itself. It is about the concept of isolation, of being the last of its kind, of the fear of extinction. Even Meltan and Melmetal, while tied to metal and magnetism, are less about the element and more about the idea of transformation and accumulation. They are the embodiment of growth through consumption. The pattern is clear. The older mythicals, the ones we call nature-based, are being replaced by something more philosophical. The question is, why? Part of the answer lies in the way the franchise now treats its most ancient mysteries. The hidden treasure of Area Zero did not just give us a new mythical. It redefined what we thought we knew about rare ancient Pokémon. Area Zero itself is a crater that has been closed off for decades, a place where the boundaries of time and evolution collapse into paradox. In that chasm, we found creatures that should not exist. Pokémon from the past, from the future, from alternate branches of the evolutionary tree. And in the midst of that chaos, Pekarunt emerged not as a lost relic, but as a manipulator of fates. This changes the entire framework of what a rare ancient Pokémon can mean. It is no longer enough to be old. The new rarities are those that warp the rules of existence itself. Consider the implications. If a mythical can embody a concept like control, then what other concepts are waiting to be given form? The next generation's mythicals could represent ideas we have never before seen in Pokémon. Fear, not as a type of move, but as a living presence. Memory, as a being that feeds on forgotten moments. Certainty, as an entity that makes events inevitable. The shift from nature to concept opens a door that leads to virtually infinite possibilities, and the franchise has already planted the seeds. Generation 9's Loyal 3, Okidogi, Munkidori, Fezandipiti, are not themselves mythical, but they are tied to Pekarunt through a narrative of subjugation and rebellion. They are the servants, and Pekarunt is the idea that binds them. This is a mythology built on relationships of power, not on the elements of the earth. So what does the future hold? If we follow the trajectory, the next great mystery will likely be something even more abstract. Perhaps a being that represents the very act of storytelling. A Pokémon that only exists when someone speaks its name. A creature that adapts its form based on the listener's beliefs. Or perhaps an entity that embodies nothingness. The void that existed before the first Pokémon egg hatched. The possibilities are as vast as the number of dreams that have ever been dreamed. And that is the point. As the franchise grows older, its mythicals are growing more sophisticated. They are no longer just rare animals to be caught. They are ideas made real. And that brings us to the edge of something far more unsettling. If mythicals are now concepts, then what happens when a concept refuses to be understood? What happens when a Pokémon's very nature is to remain unsolvable? That is the question that lingers after every generation. The one truth that no amount of data can pin down. The next chapter will take us into that silence. It will ask whether some mysteries are meant to remain mysteries, and whether the greatest myth of all is the belief that every question has an answer. That chapter is called The Unsolvable Truth, and when we step inside it, we may find the most illusory thing of all is the certainty that we ever understood anything at all. We've spent the last several chapters walking through the strange, the contradictory, and the deliberately incomplete, tracking each mythical from the first whispers of Mew all the way to the concept-driven oddities of Generation 9. And if there's one pattern that holds across every single one, it's this. The more you try to pin them down, the more they slip away. The shift from nature-based to concept-based mythicals is really just a shift in the kind of fog they wear. Instead of a mist over a forest, you get a mist over an idea, but the fog itself never lifts, and that might be the point. So let's ask the question that's been waiting in the shadows since the beginning. Are mythicals meant to be understood? Or are they meant to be merely witnessed? The Japanese term for them is illusory Pokémon. Not rare, not legendary, but illusory. That word carries a specific weight. An illusion isn't something you solve. It's something you see. Something that tricks your senses. Something that feels real until you reach out to touch it. And then it's gone. The games never give us a full dossier on Muse biology. We never get a definitive timeline for Arceus's creation. Majana's soul heart is described in lore as the source of its life, but no one explains what that heart actually is. The Pokédex entries are poetic fragments, not scientific papers. They hint at a truth, but never state it outright. This isn't a design flaw, it's a feature, because the moment a mythical becomes fully understood, it stops being mythical. It becomes just another Pokemon you can look up on Bulbapedia. The unsolved nature is what keeps the door open. It's why, decades after Mew was first teased, people still debate whether it really holds the DNA of every Pokemon, or whether that was just a rumor that became accepted as canon. It's why Genesec's original form remains a blank space. It's why Diance's relationship to Carbink is still officially said to be, rather than confirmed. The gaps in the Pokédex are not errors. They are the franchise's most valuable currency. Think about what happens when a gap is closed. Sometimes it's wonderful, like getting to actually catch Mew in a game after years of event exclusivity. But there's always a tiny loss. A piece of the mystery evaporates. That's why the developers leave some threads dangling. They know that longevity in a world of Pokemon doesn't come from answering every question. It comes from leaving a few questions that feel personal, that feel like they belong to the player's own imagination. The mythicals that endure are the ones we still wonder about. The ones that feel like they came from a story we only half remember. And so we close the case files. Not because the cases are solved, but because they were never meant to be closed. Mewtwo's existential crisis, Celebi's tangled timeline, Jirachi's wish granting that might just be coincidence or might be something deeper, Darkrai, whose morality we still can't pin down, Hooper, who bends dimensions in ways that make space-time physicists wince, Shadow, the shadow that watches but never speaks, Melton, the bizarre little creature that somehow evolved from a glitch in Pokemon Go into a proper member of the mythical family. Every one of them carries a piece of the unsolvable, and that's exactly why they matter. The Pokemon that shouldn't exist, the ones that appear only for a limited time, the ones whose stories feel like half-remembered dreams. They remind us that the Pokemon world is bigger than what we can capture. It's a world full of legends that resist being reduced to data. The gaps are not empty spaces, they are invitations. They invite us to keep wondering, keep guessing, keep imagining what might be hiding in the next event distribution or the next forgotten corner of the lore. So no, you don't have to understand them. You just have to witness them, to let them be strange, to let them be elusive. And maybe that's the greatest gift a mythical can give. Not answers, but the simple, beautiful act of not knowing. As you drift off tonight, let the unsolved mysteries stay unsolved. Let Mew's smile stay a secret. Let Arceus remain the original one. Whatever that really means, the gaps are safe. The gaps are what keep the dream alive. And in a world of Pokemon, that's the truest legacy of all. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.